All right, there we go. All right, so good morning. Thank you for being here. Let me just start off by saying why the quiz is canceled. So I'm gonna move the date for the quiz. Let's just go to Google Classroom for a second. We're gonna move it till the 27th, which is the Monday after you come back from reading week. And the reason for that is, as I was being a very good role model and testing my questions before I gave them to my students, what happened is I realized that when I wrote the quiz last week, you guys are nowhere near where the other two classes are. And that's just the nature of how this class is, with only once a week, every 3 hours. So it will probably take all of this class for sure to get you at least closer to being able to write quiz 1. And it just wouldn't be fair, obviously, if I asked you to write the quiz in a different fashion than the other class, or to answer the questions that the other class, the material that the other class has taken. So if this inconvenienced you in any way, I do apologize. But hey, you did study a little bit, so you should be even more ready the next time that you want to write this quiz. Okay? So let me just change that date right now to the 27th, which is the Monday, like I said, the Monday we come back. Okay, and that'll be, yeah, all the same things that we normally would do here. Okay, I'm gonna go save. There we go. Okay, so if we look at the other things on my little list here today, so we've kind of done that. We're going to have some notes on digital citizenship. And then we are going to, I might as well talk about the courses before we do the notes. But then we're going to do the start, at least, and hopefully we'll be able to get all of our infographic for digital citizenship in Google Drawings started today. Okay. All right. So let's just go to Google Classroom for 1 sec. And where are they? Right here. I haven't released them to you yet. Let me release them right now so you can see what I'm talking about. And we'll make these due on the 27th at lunchtime as well. So this is just assignments. So we'll assign that. Okay, perfect. And then I'm going to assign the other one, and then I'll explain them to you. Okay. And again, that'll be due on the 27th at lunchtime. Perfect. I think we're all good to go here now. There you go. Okay. So if you look under week 5, you will see that there is 2 digital citizenship things here, assignment 9 and assignment 10. I'm just going to go to the course one first. And so what this one is it's actually a Google course. You're going to take it. I think it'll take you about half an hour to do, maybe a little bit more, maybe 45 minutes max. It's all common sense stuff that as an adult you would know already. And what's nice about doing it is you get a nice little certificate at the end saying that you've completed the course, and you could use that in your resume and or in your e-portfolio later on, or now or later on, whenever you have your e-portfolio started to be developed. Now, for this course, for this number 9 course, there are 2 things that I need from you, like to prove to me or show me that you've completed the course. One is, I'll just open this up here, a screenshot of your completion screen at the end of the course saying that you passed the course, and whoopsie, sorry, and that I can see the picture of you up here. So that's one thing I need from you. Okay. The second thing I need from you is the actual certificate that you'll get. And it'll look like this. It'll say congratulations. It'll have your name here, right here. And it'll say that you completed the course on whatever day it is. Okay. So it's not too hard to do. And like I said, it's a nice thing to have, even have it in your resume. Okay. And then the second one is another digital citizenship thing, but it's a little bit different. Okay. It's an actual game that you will play. And And then at the end, you'll get this awesome, and I'll just put it up on the screen here. You get this awesome certificate, okay? I just put this in fancy red kind of curly writing here, but yours will be black, just like regular plain old font. But it'll say you're awesome, and I'll need that as well. Now you can download it or you can screenshot it. Doesn't matter to me. But if you're going to use it in your ePortfolio, you'll need to download it. Okay, so you'll get those 2 certificates for playing this. Now, like I said, that this one is a game, and if I click on the link, it takes me to this site. And what does it want to do? These some cookies, that's fine. And then what it's going to do is it's going to launch this game that you will play. And I think there's 4 levels, if I can recall correctly now. It's been, I haven't played it since September, but 4 levels, I think. Let me just double check here. It'll show us here in a second. So you get this little character. This is like this is who you'll be playing as. Yeah, there's the 4 worlds there. And you use the arrow keys and the space bar to move them around. So I don't know what this is going to look like on your screen, but I'm just going to just sort of give you a little bit of a demo here. And so you can see I've played it, so it's just play again here. But what you do is you're going to move through here. It'll give you some scenarios, and you just play the game. You can play it from start to finish if you want, but you can also stop and come back to it and that kind of thing. I would say that this would take you probably in the neighborhood of 45 minutes to complete, if you really sort of give it right, from the start to the finish. If you want to go around and explore and collect everything that you can collect, it took me 3 hours. So anyways, you can do whatever you want on it. Again, you play through, and then again, what I want in the end is this certificate of awesomeness with your name on it. Whoopsie. Okay. All right. Thoughts, questions about that? Everybody's good? Okay. So again, that's assignment 9 and assignment 10 in Google Classroom, which then leads us to what we're going to talk about today, which is our digital citizenship kind of notes that I want to give you. Okay. And then that leads into an assignment creating an infographic in Google Drawing. All right. Now, let me just go to my next page here. There we go. All right. So a little bit of notes then from here forward. All right. Oh, yeah, that's good. All right. So I'm just going to write down a question, and I want you to think about this question for a second. Oh, and we're going to abbreviate so we don't have to write out digital citizenship every single time, just as DC. So why is digital citizenship important? Okay, I want you to think about that question. And if you want to write down or jot down in your notes a couple of reasons why digital citizenship is important, that would be great too. And then in a second or two, I'm going to ask you to just to type some other reasons in the chat. Okay? Why is digital citizenship important? All right, somebody go ahead. Anybody got an idea? You can either turn your mic on or give me something in the chat. Why is it important? Safety, yes. And maybe Shanice, the number one thing. Why else? So think about not only just yourself, but think about kids, right? So part of your job is to teaching them how to be safe in all kinds of different environments. So this idea, this notion of digital citizenship is no different than you teaching them how to behave themselves in the classroom or at the school. So what other things do you need to talk about? Yeah, so privacy, security, safety, for sure. Is there anything else that we want to teach them? Nothing? So when students are using laptops in your classroom, you'll let them do anything they want. Is that right? Responsibility, right? Right? What could be considered false information, or we can quote, Donald Trump, fake news, right? be able to have a good digital footprint. Yes, right? When somebody searches your name, you want positive results to come up, not pictures of you partying and doing, maybe things that maybe you shouldn't be doing socially, or at least social in social media, and letting the whole world know. What else do we got here? Be able to use technology. So yes, to be able to use technology more proficiently. Perfect. Okay, yeah. So those are all great ideas. So let's then define what a digital citizen is. Okay, because if I asked you the notion of what would a good Canadian citizen look like, just day to day, somebody walking down the street kind of idea, what would that person look like? But then now I'm going to ask you, what does a digital citizen look like? Because they have some similarities, but yet they have some differences, right? So here's a little bit of a definition. A digital citizen is a person using hold on, sorry. Just back up. There we go. Hold on a sec. Got a little something on my screen there. Hold on. Sorry. There we go. Oops. Oh. Hold on here. I don't exactly know what I did there, but that's okay. A digital citizenship, a digital citizen is a person using. Oh, did I have the word info? There we go. Info technology. And then I'm going to put in a square bracket here, the word appropriately. Okay, so a digital citizen is a person using info technology appropriately in order to engage in society, okay, politics, politics, and interestingly enough, government. Right? So if you look at that definition and you think about that definition, right, that is exactly what we're trying to do with students when we're face to face with them. And it's not any different actually when they're digital. Okay. And if you think about it, I mean, what are the goals of education? Is to create responsible citizens who obey the laws, who pay taxes, and then who contribute to their overall community or society. And really, if you look at the definition that we just wrote, it's not really that much different, right? Is we want them to engage in the same types of ways when they're online as they do in face-to-face. Now, of course, there are some nuances that are different between face-to-face communication and online and all that jazz, and you know that. And then, of course, the other key word that I put in those brackets there was appropriately, right? Because I could have just said a person using information technology in order, right? Which was the original definition, but I added in appropriately and then threw it in those brackets like that so that you knew, or you'd know, that whoever wrote the quote down added their own words. Okay, so anyways, we've got this thing. So we teach kids all kinds of stuff all day long. Think of it this way. This might be the easiest maybe analogy to make, right? We teach school or kids in school how to cross the street, right? Look both ways, don't proceed till, the driver's looking at you and you know that they see you and all that jazz. So it's no really different than when students are engaging in online activity, that we teach them to sort of look both ways, metaphorically at least, right, on the information highway, so that they don't get themselves in trouble, right? And so all the things that you guys put in the chat are all exactly right. It's all about, especially with children, it's all about safety and security and privacy and those kinds of things, okay? And so that when you as a classroom teacher are taking kids online or letting them use technology in your room that gets them online to get information, that they're doing that in a responsible way, right? I mean, you don't want kids going home snickering in the hallway between one another, telling each other, oh, did you see all the bad things I did in class on the computer today that, Miss or Mr. or whoever didn't see, right? We want them engaging appropriately. And of course, not only appropriately in school, but appropriately at home as well, because often students don't get the rules, or they don't get how to act appropriately from home. So unfortunately, we have to give it to students. Okay. All right, let's move on a little bit down. And if we think about digital citizenship, and we think about the platform that we engage in, which is technology, one of the things that we know is that technology is forever evolving, right? The latest, greatest MacBook you have in front of you, within a year, Apple or somebody will come out with something better, greater, all that kind of stuff. So we know that it's always changing. So one of the things that we need to be aware of then is that, and we'll just write it here, digital citizenship is the continuously developing norms of appropriate responsible and empowered technology use. All right. So some keywords in there is that sort of that continuously developing, right? Just like our technology is continuously developing day after day, year after year. And when that technology changes, or there's new things for us to do, or for students to investigate, or places for us to be online, right? We have to understand what the norms are of appropriate use and how to be responsible on that platform, and then also be empowered. And what they're talking about there is that you have the confidence, at least, of that when you're on there, you're doing things right. You're not doing anything where someone can steal your identity or your credit card numbers or whatever it is else that you or kids would do online, right? So it's all good there. And as long as we have some rules, and as far as rules go, we have our ICT curriculum, right? Our information communication technology curriculum. Right within that, one of there's three strands within that ICT curriculum, right? And so, and I'm just kind of going to abbreviate them and not give the full one. One is called Foundations. One is Communication, and I'm just going to put calm down. And the other one is Productivity. Okay. Productivity. And honestly, when we use technology with students in class, kind of like where we always kind of go to the cognitive domain of Bloom's taxonomy, we go almost naturally to this productivity strand in the ICT curriculum, because it's stuff that we want kids to produce for us. But if we kind of thought of this in a hierarchy like we do, with Bloom's taxonomy, I don't know which ones would come first, whether it be communications or foundations at the bottom, and then you'd eventually want to get to productivity. But the foundations are really, when we talk about digital citizenship, is the primary area that we would look. There might be some under communication as well, about communicating online. So we're more interested in the first two here than we are in the one that we normally are all the time as teachers, because again, we want kids to produce stuff for us, right? But in the ICT curriculum, you're going to find stuff about this appropriate, responsible use, etc., in that kind of a document. Okay, and it's one, of course, that's the foundation of this course. And of course, also, anytime that you use technology in the classroom, you should be trying to achieve one of these outcomes from this curriculum. Just like if you were teaching long division in math today and you were going to use calculators, calculators are a form of technology. You should be kind of referencing that back to the ICT curriculum. Anyways, lots of things to think about. Okay, so when we talk again about the norms and what a digital citizenship are, what we're looking at is we want to look at skills and knowledge that students, let's say that our students instead, that our students need, more, let me back up here. Students need, right, to navigate the world today. Right? And it's a very different world than when your parents, were using technology for the first time. And I don't know if we can go back much more than that, but maybe one more generation back to the early 90s or even 80s using old Apple computers. But right, so there's all these skills that we need, and the skills, even the skills you needed back when I first started using technology, are not the skills you need today. They're very similar ones, but there's a lot more added on to that, to the overall skill level that you need to have. Okay, all right. I also want to say that, so then I want to continue on with this. So then we, right, as teachers, as educators, must teach these skills and guide students to experience situations where they apply this knowledge, where they apply this knowledge. All right. So as we think about that, then again, the skills that they need to navigate the world today, and again, a lot of this is put on to us as educators, right? Just like teaching health class and teaching sex ed and things like that, or just giving kids advice when they ask you, right? Your job is much, much more than just delivering the content, right? So you'll play many different roles to many different students, everything from, teacher to almost parent kind of idea. So again, we have this responsibility to teach kids these skills that they need. Okay. All right. Questions, thoughts? Okay. We got to move on to the 9 elements then. I just got to turn my furnace off for a sec there, everybody. It's getting a little hot in here. There we go. All right. So 9 elements then of digital citizenship. Okay. Okay. So these are in no order of importance. So 1 is not more important than 9 or any other number. Okay. If you were to look and do a search on the web and say, what are the elements of digital citizenship? You're going to come up with a few different ideas. Some will be similar to what we're talking about today, and some might be different, and that's totally fine. We're going to go with this list of 9. So if I ask you on a quiz, what are the 9 elements, or name one, or which one of these is not, or whatever, these 9 elements are the ones that we're going to go with. Okay, so number 1 then is digital access, right? And if you've heard me talk about teaching philosophies and belief statements and things like that, you would have heard me say that one of my philosophies is that all students, I believe that all students should have fair and equitable access to technology. So when we talk about digital access, that's kind of what we're getting at, is that we need to provide the access for students, but at the same time, we also have to provide access to students in multiple ways, right? If you had a student who had some kind of exceptionality or some type of a disability or, vision or gross motor skills, your expectation to provide technology to them that they can use is different than just your average normal kid. Okay. All right. So when we talk about digital access, we're talking about full electronic participation. So let's write that down. Full electronic participation, right? So no kid in, I don't know, pick a spot in Northern Alberta shouldn't have any worse access or any worse, access to technology as in a laptop, but also more importantly, even internet speed is a really important one. So, and that's one that the government recognizes, that not all communities are equal. Okay. All right. So here what we're talking about is access then, access to digital tools. Which would including, okay, but not limited to, right? Including laptops, right? And we're not talking, they don't have to have MacBook Pros, so they can have a Chromebook, right? Cameras, right? All kinds of different cameras, still cameras, all kinds of different types of cameras. I can't get it to make a mark there. Okay, it doesn't matter. And oopsie, hold on for a sec. Why? There we go. Camera, right? And the internet. Okay, there could be lots of other things that we could list, but you kind of get the general idea. Okay, because remember, we're also talking about technology that can lead to like gaining it or gathering information. So information technology, right? So again, probably our main thing would be laptops, but that doesn't bar the use of any other like phone or tablet, that kind of thing too. Okay, and then also this one's actually really important, is that again, this would be something that would be like you'd find in the TQS, right? Recognizing individual needs, oopsie. Oh, individual needs. And then we're going to underline this word, and barriers. It's a kind of a key word, barriers. Okay, to participation. Okay. And then we're going to add the last little part in here called including special needs. So again, if you've got special needs kids in your classroom, how are you going to meet their right to have access to this technology and access to information like any other student, right? So that's a question to ask yourself. Okay. All right. Number 2, I'm gonna definitely don't have enough room at the bottom of my little page here, so I'm gonna make a new one for number 2. Let's see, come on. There we go. Number 2 then is digital commerce, right? And as adults, we should all be familiar with this. I'm sure we've all done online banking or other things, right? Commerce. All right. And really kind of specifically, when we're talking about this, it's not only online banking, which involves or can involve the online buying and selling of goods, which is where we're going with this, which is the online buying and selling of goods. Right? So if you ever bought anything on eBay or Amazon or Kijiji or sold anything on those platforms that, this is kind of what we're talking about. But when we talk about with kids, especially younger kids, probably not what they're going to be doing, but what they might be doing is they might be using a game on their phone or on their game console or on a tablet, and they're buying all kinds of extra armor, or they're buying extra points or gold coins or whatever it is, and they're racking up mom and dad's credit card to, thousands of dollars. So we need to be aware of that. And we, of course, obviously we need to make kids aware of that as well. Okay, so when we talk about digital commerce, we're talking about the purchasing, right? And selling of items, purchasing and selling items on auction sites. So again, like eBay. Or, other types of, online stores. Okay. We need to be very mindful of online coupons, right? Right? Mostly two things you should remember in life. A, there are no free lunches. And B, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is, right? So online coupons have got a bad rap. Some of you may use Honey for your coupons. And I know in the past that they've been accused of doing things that are not maybe up on the up and up with people's data and stuff like that. So just be careful with those types of things. Like I said, there's no free lunches. If you get a free app on your phone, they're doing something else because they have to make money somehow, right? So think about that. Free apps are great, but at the same time, what information is it taking off of your device and then putting in a database somewhere, and then some company selling that information, right? So just got to be careful about that. And of course, we need to teach kids to be careful about that, right? And then of course, the other thing that we have to think about and talk about is not only when you purchase something, there's often a download that comes with that, right? So downloading media, right? It could be anything. It could be a picture, it could be a whole game, it could be a piece of software to make, so you could do something on your computer. But we need to be very cognizant of where we're downloading it from. Is it a reputable site? Should you buy it from the app store, whatever store that might be on whatever platform you're on? Should you buy it from the store instead of some side website somewhere, even though it might be a little bit cheaper there? Should you, like, those kinds of things we need to think about and keep in mind, is that where you're downloading stuff from. Okay. All right. Number 3 then. Oh my goodness. Come on. What's going on here? Number 3 then is digital communications, right? And this is one we're all pretty good at these days, right? Digital communication. And what we're talking about here is the electronic, right? Or you can put the word in digital if you want. The electronic exchange of information. Exchange of information, right? And we know how important this is because every single company that you do business with basically wants your information, right? So no matter what social media platform you're on or what website you visit or anything like that, it's all about your information, right? Think about this. When's the last time you were on Amazon or maybe even eBay or a place like that? And then from now on, like the next 2 weeks, every website you visit has, the things that you were looking on at Amazon to buy. And now you're inundated with all of these ads about, a new pair of shoes or something, right? So like I said, don't be fooled that you don't think that these people take your information and it's disseminated all over the place for money, right? So when we talk about digital communication, one of the things, of course, that we need to talk about obviously is email, right? That's a big gateway or a big portal of where people try to get you to click on stuff or, give your personal information away to some fake website, right? So email is really important one for all of us to understand, right? blogs or vlogs, right? So where people are putting in their opinion, or they've got their own blog and they're talking about some subject. Obviously, is it valid information? Where are they? Who are they? All the kinds of questions we need to ask about people, right? Of course, any social networking channel, app, that kind of stuff. Social networking, right? And of course, or instant messaging, right? Whether that be Facebook Messenger, the messaging app on your phone, whatever, through whatever platform or whatever app, that's what we're talking about, right? And of course, we've probably all read in the news how there have been kids that have been lured by sickos to thinking that they're meeting up with another, teenager or something like that. And it ends up being some, 50, 60-year-old weirdo that's trying to lure them for sex or other nefarious things, right? So again, we have to be very careful about not ourselves, but when we teach kids about this kind of stuff, of who to trust and who not to trust, and how do you actually confirm that who it is that you're actually talking to and all that stuff, right? So we've got that. How about this one? And we could spend a whole class talking about managing your online identity. So somebody said that in the chat. They said Matea said about digital footprints, right? So that again, when people follow us or see us online, that we are portraying a positive image, right? So let's just write managing, and I'm going to say the word positive, and I'll put it in little brackets here again. Oh, it's my own notes, but I want to just highlight that. So managing an online identity, but a positive one, right? Right. So managing an online identification. What is that? Just a sec here. Sorry, there we go. All right. So we want to manage a positive one, right? In your shoes as up and coming teachers, of people who want to get a job, it is really important that when a superintendent or a principal or your mentor teacher or anyone really types in your name or searches for you on a social media platform, and whatever they find about you needs to portray you in a positive light. I can tell you from experience and being on dozens of hiring committees over the last 20, 30 years, whatever, and especially in the last 5, of course, where the ability to do that, just, type in somebody's name and man, you can find out so many things about a person. And I can tell you that what you want people to find are positive things. Because I can tell you right now that there have been hiring committees that I've been on where we've searched people's names, and the potential negative stuff that was found online then did not lead to an interview or farther on down the application process. So be really careful, because people do that nowadays, right? And even when you can say to yourself, you know what, I've got my networks locked down, only my friends can see them, or only so-and-so can see them, that's great. But you realize that once anyone other than yourself can see it, you have no control over where images or text or anything that you post online goes, right? And once it's out there, it's almost impossible to get it back, right? So we just need to be careful with that, and we need to impart that on kids, is that we want to manage this positive online digital footprint that people follow you around on. Okay. All right. Enough about that one. Of course, understanding privacy settings. Right. And we have to not only we be aware, but let our kids be aware that, companies like Facebook, they bury all these settings so far and so deep that even though on the surface, sometimes you're clicking the things that you think that are keeping you private, down below, there's, 10 more clicks, 10 levels down, that you didn't click that one button that then, none of your changes really worked or things like that. So we have to be very careful and understand how deep those privacy settings go. Okay. So understanding privacy settings. And then this one, of course, again, with young children, we need to really spend a lot of time on this. And we're talking about the impact of online relationships compared to face-to-face. Compared to face-to-face. Okay. So again, thinking about that one, you know, thinking that when we talk to kids, you know, we tell them not to talk to strangers. You know, what do you do if some weirdo is in a car and has got a new puppy and wants you to come look at it? We've all heard those stories, right? Right. But the same thing goes online, right? So you meet somebody online in a game forum or in whatever social media app or wherever it is, doesn't matter. And all of a sudden they're your buddy. And like I said, do you really know who this person is? So being able to verify that in some way is really, really important. And of course, people can fake anything. So, all right. So of course, then what we want to teach kids is that, hey, you tell your parents or tell your significant adult about what's going on so they can help you make an appropriate decision. Okay. Number 4 is digital literacy. And digital literacy kind of goes hand in hand with digital citizenship, but they shouldn't really be mistaken for the same thing because they kind of aren't. Like you said, they kind of go hand in hand, and one works really well with the other one. But when we talk about digital literacy, it's all those skills that we're teaching is really kind of the digital literacy part. But we're going to write it down here. And so digital literacy is actually the process, right, of teaching and learning about technology. Process of teaching and learning about technology. Okay. So that's what digital literacy is. No different than literacy itself, where we're talking about English language skills, let's say, or language skills, whatever language that might be, and also numeracy, right? Those are the two big pushes by our current UCP government, is that literacy and numeracy are the most important things that right now we need to teach kids. So when we talk about other literacies, obviously there's many other ones, and digital literacy would be one of the many, right? So again, just like teaching them literacy about you know, poetry or something like that, we also need to teach them these skills about technology. Okay. And again, the ICT curriculum really helps us deliver and support what we're doing in the classroom with technology, because it's an actual outcome, just like other outcomes in other programs of study. So when we talk about digital literacy, we're going to talk about skills for effectively, sorry, let me draw a little line here. Okay, skills for effectively finding and evaluating, effectively finding, right, which is one phase, and evaluating internet resources, evaluating internet resources, right? And again, purposely use that word internet resources, then finding and evaluating information, because that's not the only thing that we find or evaluate on the web. Again, you might find a great lesson plan template that you want to use on your own computer. Well, again, where is it coming from? Is it a reputable place? Is there a charge? Is there, like, what are they, if it's free, are they asking you for something? A lot of websites just ask you for your email address so they can sell your email address, and then you get all kinds of spam. So again, skills for effectively finding and evaluating any kind of internet resource, software, freebies, whatever it is that you want to use as a teacher, or you want your kids to access as a student. We need to be pretty cognizant that they're doing it in an appropriate way, right? So when we are going out there to sort of find and evaluate that information, we also want to be then using tools to help manage and filter media from the internet. I'm just going to write in a web here. Don't have room for internet. Okay. So again, same idea. Downloading, managing, filtering, right? Because think of this. If you were to go to, well, I'll just show you here what I'm talking about, right? Talk about filtering information. So we're going to do a Google search, and boys and girls, we're going to be doing reports on your favorite type of animal. Oh, my favorite type of animal is a dog. So there we go. Oh, there's only 6 billion places to visit, right? So again, talking about how to filter down, what they actually be very specific in what they need. So then we would obviously, again, for us as adults, somewhere along the way, somebody taught you, hopefully, that, how to filter and that kind of stuff. Or something as simple as this. We could go dogs, but minus, what can I pick on here? I want Cocker Spaniels. And I do like Cocker Spaniels, so I'm not really picking on anybody here. Right? So, but simply putting that minus sign in front of the word Cocker Spaniels, it will now do this search and not give me any, hopefully. Well, there you go. Images for Cocker Spaniels. Well, that didn't work very good, did it? But anyways, that's the general idea, is that it won't give you that. One of the ones that I do is minus TPT, so no teachers pay teachers, and minus, I know, heaven forbid, Pinterest. I also do those ones as well. So anyhow, just some simple stuff like that teaching kids how to do things like that. Okay. All right. Using tools. And then the last one under this section is making connections between digital tools to enhance learning. Okay, and I'll give you a small example. So today we are going to use Google Drawing. And I think I said when we were working on our slideshows that all the skills that you learn on how to add things or do things on a Google slide is exact same tools and stuff that you use in Google Drawing. So there's that making connections. It's like, oh, I've seen this before. Or the fact that you might be a Google Docs user, somebody else might be a Microsoft Word user, and some of you Apple fans out there might be Pages users, right? They're all word processing softwares, but you should be able to, again, kind of cross the lines and be able to use one or the other, even though you're not super familiar with it, because there's these connections that we make between all these different tools, and they have similar commands and all that kind of stuff, right? So that's a little bit about digital literacy. Again, we could talk probably a lot longer about it, but we just don't have time to do that. So number 5 is digital etiquette. Okay. And if you're unsure what etiquette is, it is a spelling word for my spelling test that I'm giving you. Etiquette. Okay. So digital etiquette, just like in a face-to-face situation, it is ways of conducting oneself in a digital environment. In a digital environment. Okay. So just like your students, that when they come to school, there's a way that they conduct themselves at school. There's a way that you, as a teacher, conduct yourself at school, either as a student or as the person in charge. You still conduct yourself in a different way, right? You conduct yourself differently if with the kids that you're teaching than with your colleagues or their parents, the kids' parents, or your admin. And even beyond that, you would conduct yourself differently than you would with your principal if you were talking to the superintendent, right? Or, go up the tree, or the ladder. We talk to people different ways in different situations, right? So again, kids need to know that when it's a face-to-face environment, that you talk to an adult in a certain way, different than you talk to your friends, kind of thing. But also then, how does this apply in the digital world, right? So there are rules around that. We're actually going to do an assignment after we do this sort of digital citizenship stuff for kids. We're going to do one called teacher etiquette, and sort of just outline skills that teachers should know and should use when they're in the digital world as well. Okay, so ways of conducting oneself in a digital environment. So if we start off with our first point here is, again, this is just a bit of a reiteration of what I've said a few times already, but using technology to reflect the best qualities and codes of conduct. Right? So again, just like you're dictated by a code of conduct as an educator in the province, there's also codes of conduct and best qualities and things that we want to, again, show the world so that we are in a positive light, right? Another thing about technology is using technology when appropriate. Okay. And some of you may have gone to schools where there was no cell phone use, or if you got caught using your cell phone, you got it taken away and those kinds of things. Well, that kind of falls under the second point, is using technology when appropriate, right? It is not appropriate really for you to be texting or playing a game or whatever on your phone when there's teaching and learning going on, that kind of idea, right? And again, that boils down to the school's philosophy, your own classroom philosophy, all of those kinds of things. But so using technology when appropriate. Okay, and then the last point under this, number 5, is respecting the privacy and rights of others. So respecting the privacy and rights of others, right? Right? And every one of us can say, hey, I've got rights. And actually, you do. You have all kinds of rights. You've got human rights, you've got Charter of Rights and Freedoms, you've got digital rights, you've got students' rights and responsibilities. I've got responsibilities as the teacher. We all have them in every facet of our lives, right? So again, when I say that, when I say I want you to respect my privacy, then it's kind of like the do unto others thing, right? Is that when someone's typing in their password, what's the etiquette for that? Well, it's not to look over their shoulder and see what they're typing, right? It's to, I don't know, look the other way or just close your eyes or do something. But I mean, if I'm going to respect your privacy and your passwords and all that jazz, then I shouldn't be looking over your shoulder to see what you're typing on your keyboard, right? Even things simple as that, right? All right, number 6. Okay, we're almost there. So number 6 is digital law. And this is kind of one of my favorite areas, actually, because it's one of those areas where we talk about, how technology is always evolving and we got to keep up with the norms. This is the government trying to keep up with those changes and what's all going on online and what people are doing and trying to make sure people are safe. So digital laws, I think, is pretty fascinating. So, but it really, what it boils down to, just like, again, when it's face-to-face, you're responsible for your actions, right? Just, I always say, people feel so safe to type anything in social media and Twitter or, whatever, pick your social media platform and say horrible things about people. But my question is, would you say that to somebody's face? Probably 80 to 90% of people would say, I would never say that to somebody's face, right? But online, people think they can say anything, kind of idea, right? All right. So responsibility for actions and deeds, and deeds online. Okay, just like you're responsible for your actions and deeds face to face, right? If you say something that is slanderous against a person face to face or online, it's still against the law, right? You can't do that kind of stuff. So there are these laws, and like I said, the government is trying to keep up to what the changes that are going on in technology to try to keep people protected. So, all right, but it also involves things like this: creating original works that are free from, spelling test word again here, plagiarism. Right? Well, right on our course outline, it talks about plagiarism, right? And I talked about plagiarism on the very first day, about the consequences of that, and you know, if people get caught doing it, that there are serious consequences for it, right? And so the same thing we have to impart is to our students: is you cannot go to the art history website, copy and paste 1,000 words into your, you know, art history paper or whatever, and submit that as your own work, right? We all know that, but kids don't necessarily know that. So we have to teach that to kids. You can't do that. Okay. Next thing down is respecting the digital data, the digital data and information of others, including copyright, which I think we're all familiar with, and one that some of you might be familiar with, but maybe some of you won't, is something called Creative Commons. All right, let's do one little fun thing here. Well, I don't know if it's fun, how fun it is, but let's do this. I'm going to answer a poll question. Okay. And it's just yes or no. And we'll let everybody see the responses. No names, of course, so you can answer anonymously. No one will see it. And I'm going to launch it. And the question is, do you know what Creative Commons is? This is kind of a neat feature that you can use in Google Classroom, and it'll show you how many people know what. So if you're doing a little check for understanding, or doing a little just quick checkup, you can see, wow, most of you don't know what it is. Okay, fair enough. Okay, you can keep voting if you want. I'll just give you a quick little explanation. So Creative Commons is a website that allows you, well, they don't allow you, but they've set up some, and I'll bring this up onto the main screen here. Just like here. There we go. So there's a website called Creative Commons, and what it does is it allows the person who authored the book, the art piece, you know, the poem, it doesn't matter, whatever it is, it allows people then to do kind of the following things. You can copy things, you can distribute things, you can edit things, you can remix things, or you can take somebody's idea and build upon it. But what Creative Commons does then is, let's say I write a story and you want to use it, is I then give you certain permissions on how you can use my work, right? So for example, the brain lesson plan, right? I mean, that is my intellectual property that I've put together, but then I have shared it with you, and I've told you, I mean, not in a typing type of way, but I've told you verbally at least that go ahead and use it anytime you want. If that's the one you want, go ahead and use it. But so this would be the but part with Creative Commons, but you may not resell it. Okay, so you can use it anywhere you want. You can copy it as many times as you want. You can add to it or build on it, but you can't take that idea and sell it, right? So that would be an example of a digital or a Creative Commons type of license. So it allows users to use other people's work with different kinds of permission, basically. Okay. All right. So we've got that down. And so there's just a couple more. I'll see if I can squeeze them on here. Okay. So no intentional, right, comma, malicious, there's another spelling test word, malicious acts, including hacking, virus development, okay, or identity theft. And you might be thinking, that's pretty heavy. But I'll give you an example of where all of you have agreed to this. So all of you, when you started at RDP and you wanted to sign on to the network so you could have Wi-Fi on campus, all the stuff you didn't read, but you went click I agree, has words and sentences like this, that you're not going to do anything bad on the network. You're not going to try to hack it so you can, I don't change people's grades. You're not going to try to upload a virus into the network. You're not going to go on there and try and steal somebody's ID number and their identity. You've already agreed to all of those things by being on an RDP network. Okay. The same thing applies basically to any network you're on. So for instance, how many of you, you don't have to answer, it's just in your head. How many of you have Shaw? How many of you have TELUS? Or pick your other providers that are out there, right? All of them, when you, again, you've all had to click these I agree kind of statements, and every one of them have words to that effect, that you're a good boy and girl. You're not going to do anything bad. You're not going to try to do anything bad on our network or anybody else's network. You're not going to sell porn on our network. You're not going to do any criminal activities on our network, those kinds of things. And if you get caught doing them, then, there's a range of things that can happen to you, from being booted off the network and not being able to go back on it, all the way to obviously could be, go to jail kind of idea. Okay. So same idea. So again, when you sign those agreements or click I agree, you need to be aware of what you're agreeing to, right? That kind of stuff. Okay, we got one right below this last point, but I don't have room for it, so I'm just going to squeeze it on right here because it's actually just one word, and that is bullying. Okay, and obviously in the environment that we're talking about in a digital world, we're talking about cyberbullying, of course, which is a fairly new thing. If you think about, the span of humankind, is a, kind of a new thing, cyberbullying, especially with respect to, not kids, but anyone being able to really go online and be mean to other people kind of thing, right? So, and of course, we've all read in the news where kids that have been bullied online, have committed suicide or done other horrible things like shootings and things like that. So, I mean, we need to take bullying seriously as teachers, whether it be online or whether it be on the playground kind of idea. And also knowing that, and students knowing that, cyberbullying outside of school hours, a lot of kids think, well, I'm not in school, I can say whatever I want to somebody online. That's not true either. As a matter of fact, in almost any case of cyberbullying that I've been aware of, that have been outside of school hours, has always been brought back to the school, and those students dealt with in an appropriate manner, whether it be suspensions, whether it be calling the police or those kinds of things. It is brought back to the school, even though it was committed outside of school hours in the community away from the school. It's still almost always brought back to the school. Okay. All right. Because obviously we're dealing with students, and even though it's cyberbullying off campus and off school hours, it's probably something to do with being at school as well. So anyways, all right, number 7, 8, and 9 coming up, and then we'll have a quick break, and then we'll move on to some hands-on stuff. So number 7 is digital security. Oops, back up. Digital security. Okay, and we're just going to call it electronic precautions. Electronic precautions. Precautions to protect learners. Okay, so our kids mostly. Staff. Right, so everybody from the janitor to the secretary lady to you in the classroom, right? To protect learners, protect staff, and to protect your organization. Right, so we don't want viruses on our network. We don't want to be held ransom, you know, our stuff under ransomware. We don't want those kinds of things. And so under digital security, a lot of places go to great lengths to teach their staff, their people, about what emails do you click on, what links should you click on. You know, if you got to ask yourself, does this look suspicious? It probably does. That kind of stuff, right? So under digital security, and I just talked about this, but I'm going to write it down now in its official wording, is following acceptable use policies. Acceptable use policies. And I'm writing it this way because the wider world just refers to it as AUPs. Okay. So, and again, that's where you've gone, I agree, I agree, I agree. Every time you log on a network, or you know, when you signed on for the Google account, your EDU account, you had to say yes, 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 right? Again, what basically part of that is what they're going to do with your information, but also it is that you're going to be a good boy and girl using their stuff, that kind of idea. So following acceptable use policies, like I said, you signed one or clicked on one when you logged on the first time to the RDP network. You would have done the same thing when you logged on the first time to a school network, that kind of stuff. And so then under digital security, obviously, right, is using technology responsibly. Just like we would teach kids in a face-to-face scenario how to use, I don't know, a piece of shop equipment responsibly, or, you know, something in foods and fashions responsibly, or something in the gym, right? Or anything really, right? Teaching them how to use that responsibly, but we also have to teach them how to use technology responsibly. And then the last one under number 7 is reporting incidents to ensure security and safety for all. Okay. So, and once kids know the rules, and I can tell you this from experience, once kids know the rules, they'll narc on each other every single time, right? If they see somebody doing something wrong, it's just kids' nature to go and tattletale on them. So, and then of course you have to deal with it in whatever severity it is. It's usually looking on websites they're not supposed to be looking on, stuff like that. But all right, 2 more. Number 8. Number 8 is digital health and wellness, right? Again, we talk about digital or our well-being, you know, maintaining a balanced life and all of that kind of jazz. Well, that goes with technology as well, right? You know, sitting down for, and I could pick on video games, but I could pick on anything. Sitting down for anything for, you know, 12 hours straight and not doing anything else is probably not a good thing for you, right? So when we talk about digital health and wellness, we're talking about kind of 2 things. We're talking about your physical and, of course, psychological. I'm going to write this all the way under here. And psychological well-being. So again, just like we teach kids that they need to exercise and get out and get fresh air and not be just a couch potato, that kind of idea, is we're talking about that here when we talk about digital, right? And of course, we've all been guilty of, binge watching something on TV, or where some of us, now maybe not all of us, have been guilty of playing a video game for like days on end, that kind of idea, and not doing anything else and just being stuck on that. So all about physical and psychological well-being. So of course, one of the things then is balancing time spent online with time offline, right? So again, there's nothing wrong with playing your PlayStation or your Xbox or doing whatever it is that you want, playing, being on social media, watching TikToks, as long as you are trying to, lead this balanced life, and that's not the only thing that you're doing, right? Okay. And then the other one with this is stress injuries, right? Is knowing, let's say, I'll just say about stress-related injuries, stress-related injuries caused by overuse, right? And we see somebody start using technology. We use kids as an example because it's a good one, and them not having to wear eyeglasses. And then after, a year or two, several years of using technology, one of the, leading causes, and your eye doctor would tell you this, is, spending too much screen time, right? So not only is it bad for your eyes, I'm sure you're all aware of that, the blue light that comes off of your phone or whatever device it is, that's also not very good for your brain, right? And that's why they tell you that, before you go to bed, you shouldn't be spending, 25 minutes scooching through TikToks with all that blue light, because it affects your brain and your ability to have a restful sleep and all kinds of other things like that. So, right. So there's all that, even just knowing that there are filters that you can apply to your phone so that it makes the light a little bit warmer, knowing that, or certainly as a parent, but for parents, that there's a way to limit their child screen time and all of that kind of jazz. So anyhow, digital health and well-being, lead a balanced life, really is the moral of the story, right? And then the last one, number 9, I think I can squeeze number 9 on the same page, is digital rights and responsibilities. And responsibilities. Okay. And what we're really getting at here is keeping your devices and identities online, secure and safe. Okay, so I'm going to ask you this question. Let's do another poll. Let's end that one and let's add another one. Okay. It's now a yes or no question. Okay. And the question is, do you keep your passwords locked down in an app? Okay. And if you're going to say, yeah, I use the notes, the notes software on my phone, we're going to talk about that in a sec too. So here, I'm just going to save that and launch it. So how many of you have your passwords locked down in an app? versus having them just sort of, I don't know, somewhere on your a laptop or somewhere on your phone that's not secured. So most of you don't. All right. So obviously you all know you should keep your apps or your passwords in some type of password or lockable app or thing like that. On an iPhone, all you iPhone users, Android, sorry, I've never used an Android phone or had one or owned one, so I don't really know, but it might be the same. So listen anyways. But on an iPhone, in your Notes app, one of the things you can do is you can lock your notes. There's a little lock and you can password protect a note. So if you're using Apple Notes for all your passwords and it's not locked down with another password, do that, right? For those of you that can afford, the $3.99 or whatever it costs for one of the apps that you can actually buy it on an app store that keeps all your passwords locked down, you should do that. I have one that's called M Secure, just a letter M and then the word secure. And I have, I think, over 400 things saved on here. Everything from my A&W app password all the way to my, retirement banking information or whatever, that kind of idea. So I have it all in there. That app is actually super duper protected, password protected, and super duper hard to hack. But I'm going to share a document with you right now on the screen, and then we're going to go for a quick break. Let me just see if I can find it here. Did I leave it on here or nuts? I didn't. That's okay. Very easy to find. Okay. So I'll make this bigger as much as I can. So this talks about passwords being uppercase, lowercase, all that jazz. So on your iPhone or on your phone, do you just use a 4-digit code like 1, 2, 3, 4, or pick a combination? Well, if it's 4 characters, hackers could hack a 4-character password instantly. Okay. So if they wanted to get on your phone, they could. Okay. Now look here, even if we use an 8-character password, if it's numbers only, it's 0 seconds, basically. Like 1 second, they can get into your stuff, right? And if you look at, even if you go across here to numbers, upper and lowercase letters and symbols, which we're all told we need to do in our password, they could hack your password in about 8 hours. Right. And you got to think of it too, that hackers aren't going, oh, geez, 1, 2, 3, 2. Oh, shoot, wrong. I'll try the next one. Right. They're using a piece of software that goes, they click a button and it just keeps cycling through passwords, possible passwords until it can find yours, which would take about 8 hours. So if you're on your banking password, if you can go more than 8 characters, certainly for your banking one, that's a great idea. Oh, right here in a second. The only piece of software or app that has access directly to my bank account, and some of you might have this too, is PayPal. My PayPal password is 16 characters long with a combination of all those upper, lowercase, blah, blah, blahs. And if you look here, it would take 1 trillion years for them to hack that password. So obviously, the moral of the story is you shouldn't keep your passwords in one place that are secure. Number 2, and I know we all do this, although I'm getting much, much better at it, we should not use the same password for multiple sites, especially your banking password should be completely separate from any other password you use anywhere else, right? Those kinds of things. So again, thinking of those things as an adult, those are things we need to teach kids, because kids have bank cards nowadays. They have phones that they can tap and pay with, right? They have all kinds of technology that gives access to people who want to do bad things lots of options to sort of try and gain your information, right? So, all right. Question. Is there any questions about the notes? No? Nobody's got questions? Okay. Like we normally do, let's take a 10-minute break. So let's come back at 10:30. My clock up here says 10, it's just about 10:20. So let's come back at 10:30 and then we will do a hands-on activity and we'll see what else we can accomplish in that time as well. Okay, so I'm going to just mute my mic and my camera and I'll see you back in 10 minutes. Okay, thanks everybody. All right, we are back, I think. Let's give another 10 seconds on my clock. All right, it's 10:30 on the button. So let's get started, or let's get back to what we were doing. We actually have, we have one more tiny little piece of notes to do, and then we can do a hands-on thing. But the nice thing is that it is all fill in the blanks. So it's like a little Mad Lib. You can find it. You know what? Here, I will put the link in the chat.
Brad,
Yes.
are we taking our quiz during class?
We're not doing the quiz today.
No? Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. I said at the beginning of class that you guys are a little bit behind the other two classes. So what we're going to do is we are going to do the quiz on the 27th instead. Okay. All right. So, okay, this is the Digital Charter of Rights. I'll just call it rights. Go, and I'll make you make your own copy of it. Okay. There we go. And it should end up with this document. And it's going to ask you to make a copy so you can fill in the blanks yourself. All right. I'll give you another few seconds to do that. So in the real world, there is a thing called the Canada's Digital Charter of Rights. And it covers some principles that we've already talked about, but I think it's interesting for us to know that there is this, formalized document at the federal level. Okay. All right. Does anybody need more time? Let me get my water bottle out of the way here. Okay. So the very first one, universal access, right? All Canadians will have, this word is equal opportunity to participate in the digital world and the necessary tools to do so, right? So we've talked about that one already, including right here, access, connectivity, literacy, and skills. So that includes everything from plugging it into the wall to what you learn how to do on a computer. The Canadian government is working on trying to get that. And we all think, I know that, rural areas and northern areas don't necessarily have the same access we do, certainly as far as internet speeds go. Okay, number 2, safety and security. Canadians will be able to rely on the integrity. Next one is authenticity. Is like spelling test, I know, sorry. Authenticity and security of the services they use and should feel safe online. I'll do that one more time. Canadians will be able to rely on the integrity, first blank, and authenticity, second blank, and security, the next two down. Okay. All right. Let me just do one thing here on my notes. There we go. Okay. Number 3, control and consent. Canadians will have control over what data, right here, data they are sharing, who is using their personal data. So what apps, what software, what websites, who's using their data and for what purposes, and know that their privacy is protected. So first blank again was control over what data is being shared, and then who is using their personal data and for what purposes, and know that their privacy is protected. Okay. So number 4, transparency, portability, and interoperability. That's a big long word, isn't it? So Canadians will have clear and manageable access to their personal data and should be free to share or transfer it without undue burden. Okay, so places like Facebook or whatever shouldn't make it a huge hassle, or Google shouldn't make it a huge hassle to be able to take your data and move it to, let's say, another email address, which Google allows you to do very, very easily to transfer your data from one account to another. Okay, so one more time, clear and manageable access to their personal data, and everybody should be able to free to share it and transfer it without undue burden. Okay. All right. Number 5, modern and digital government. So what they're saying here is that, the services that you access from the Canadian government should be modern and digital. So Canadians will be able to access modern digital services from the Government of Canada, which are secure and simple to use. So again, one more time, they're going to access modern digital services, right, which are secure and simple to use. And I don't know, it's a government. That one might be a little bit of a stretch. Certainly the simple to use one it might be a bit of a stretch. Okay, number 6, a level playing field, right? So the Canadian government, or the Government of Canada, will ensure fair competition in the online marketplace to facilitate the growth of Canadian businesses and affirm Canada's leadership on digital and data innovation while protecting Canadian consumers from market abuses. So every time you hear the Canadian government putting the brakes on YouTube or on other digital services that are especially out of the United States, trying to invade the Canadian market, sometimes the Canadian government says, whoa, nope, right? So, so that kind of idea. All right, number 7 is data and digital for good. So the Government of Canada will ensure the ethical use, right here, ethical use of data to create value, promote openness, and improve the lives of people at home and abroad. I'll do those all one more time. So again, the Government of Canada is going to ensure the ethical use of data to create value, promote openness, and improve the lives of people at home and abroad. Okay, just a couple more here, 3 more to do. So strong democracy. The Government of Canada, hold on here one second. The Government of Canada will defend, there's my arrow, there we go, right? Freedom of expression and protect against online threats and disinformation designed to undermine the integrity of elections and democratic institutions. I'll do them all one more time because there's lots there. The Government of Canada will defend freedom of expression and protect against online threats and disinformation designed to undermine the integrity of elections and democratic institutions. And I'm sure we've all seen in the news the Russians getting caught, interfering or trying to interfere in the American elections. And I'm sure it's not much different in Canada. All right, number 9, free from hate and violent extremism. And of course, I think that we all have seen this probably online in one form or another. But Canadians can expect that digital platforms will not foster or disseminate hate, violent extremism, or criminal content. I'll do this one more time. That digital platforms will not foster or disseminate hate, violent extremism, or criminal content. Okay? And again, that is easier said than done. All right, last but not least, number 10, strong enforcement and real accountability. There will be clear, meaningful penalties for violations of the laws and regulations that support these principles. And when we talk about fines, we're talking millions of dollars. So meaningful penalties for violations of the laws and regulations that support these principles. Okay. All right. Thoughts, questions about that? Or does anybody need me to do any one of those again, or any line? First, middle word on number 10, Tasana? No, number 1. Middle word here, and the necessary. Well, I can't remember myself here. Just a sec. On the necessary tools. This word is tools right here. Does that help you? Yeah, I can do the first 2 again. You bet. Okay, you bet. Tools. Okay, so do the first 2 again. Okay, sure. All Canadians will have equal opportunity to participate in the digital world and the necessary tools to do so, including access, connectivity, literacy, and skills. Okay, number 1. And number 2 was safety and security. Canadians will be able to rely on the integrity, authenticity, and security of the services they use and should feel safe online. Sam, you good now? Okay, perfect. Anybody else? No? Okay. All right. So as far as digital citizenship goes, that's our notes. Okay. So if we close the notes up for a sec now and go to Google Classroom, what we've got here is we have got sort of at least 3 things right now about digital citizenship that we need to take care of, right? We talked about the course and we talked about the game. So you can do those on your own. And actually, you know what? I'm not going to extend the deadline here. I'm going to make sure that I'm going to make that 1 more week. So that'll be March 6th. Let's do that. Then, because I think we got a lot of things that are going to be end up doing on the 27th. And then I'll do the same thing here. We'll do March 6th. That gives you lots of time to try to get this done. Okay, save that. Okay, so you've got those on your plate to do. And then now what we're looking at is we're looking at this digital citizenship infographic. So we're going to make an infographic. We're going to use Google Drawing. And yes, I know there are other tools. And several students in both my other classes asked if they could use Canva, which I'm glad they asked that question, because the answer right now is no. And only it's no right now because we're going to use Canva later on in the semester. So I'd like you to be familiar with Google Drawing. So if we look at the assignment really quick here, we're going to learn a couple things. We're going to learn about these hexadecimal colors. We'll talk about those in a sec. There is a different version, or I don't know, maybe the original version of digital citizenship there that we talked about this morning. There are some exemplar files there, if you click on them, of different digital citizenship posters that other students have done in the past. So, or we'll call them infographics, right? And then, of course, there's the rubric that goes with it. So you're going to create a Google drawing. You are going to include the 9 elements of digital citizenship with an icon and some other things. And we're going to talk about that in a second as well. So, because our next thing after infographics, let me just get out of here for 1 sec, is once we talk about infographics, we're going to have a little bit of a break, and then we're going to get right back into drawings and into actually creating infographics in Canva. So there's a little bit for us to know about infographics, which we'll cover in a bit, but let's get the beginning parts of this Google Drawing infographic under control. So let's go to our Google Drives, okay? And wherever it is that you save your stuff for this class, you could open that up if you want, but you can't find, interestingly enough, and don't ask me why, I don't know, you can't find Google Drawing under the app launcher. It's not there. So the only place you can find Google Drawing is in your drive under the new button. So if you got to go new, and you got to go to more, and then you got to go to Google Drawings. Okay, so do that. Obviously, when you do that, nothing super miraculous will happen. But we do end up with a blank Google Drawing. And what you should probably notice right off the hop is that, like, as I mentioned earlier, these tools are basically all the same as you see on a Google slide. And once we click on our this checkerboard area here and add some objects, we'll get more tools at the top as well. But before we do that, let's do 3 things. One is, let's give it a name. So you might as well call it digital citizenship. Citizenship. I'm going to call it infographic. And the only thing I'm going to add is section Z. You don't have to add that, but I'm just going to add that so I can keep it straight in my head, which class did what. Okay, so we've got a name. Okay, and then we scooch on over to share. And right now, of course, you know that anything you create brand new is automatically private. So what we want to do, in case we want to use this in our ePortfolio, is go that anyone with the link is a viewer, and we can just say done. Again, nothing miraculous happens. So we've got the name. We've changed the sharing privileges to any public on the web, which means anyone with the link. Okay, that doesn't mean that someone can search this and find it. It just means that if you give me the link, I can check it out. Okay, and then the last thing we're going to do is number 3 is under File, and we're going to go to Page Setup. Okay, and when you go to Page Setup, one of the things you'll notice is that this is exactly the same as it is on a Google slide. If I go to Google Slides and I go New Slide, and if I were to go Page Setup here, it's exactly the same, but I've changed it as a default setting. But if you go to your infographic, it's the same setup. So we don't want this standard 4:3, which is basically kind of like a square. What we want is a custom. Okay, and so what we're going to do here is we are going to create an infographic / poster that is like 2 pages in length. So 2 regular sized pieces of paper, right, in length. So it's going to be long and skinny. So because it's going to be long and skinny, we're going to make it 11, and then just tab over, click over there, by 17. Okay, so this is the equivalent of 2 regular size pieces of paper, you know, touching each other on whatever edge. And of course, if you wanted it to be landscape, right, if you wanted it to be this way, right, instead of this way, we'd go 17 by 11, and we'll do that for another assignment anyways. So your page setup is going to be custom, 11 by 17 inches. Okay, and you go apply. And again, nothing miraculous happens, although, pardon me, although our page orientation did change, right, a little bit here. So One of the other things that you could do, if you don't have the rulers showing on the side and over here on the top, you could go to view and go show ruler. Okay. And then the other thing that you can do here is you can make this bigger. So right now it's sort of scrunched it in there. I'm going to make it 100% so you can see it from side to side here. So this is kind of full size kind of idea. So what we're dealing with, if we're talking about the checkerboard that my mouse arrow is on right now, that is called the canvas. Okay. So anything that is on the checkerboard or on this canvas, or at least within the border edges here, okay, when you go file print, anything that's inside there will print. Anything that is touching, is hanging over a little bit, or is completely off the canvas does not get printed, which is good and bad. It's good that you need to know that, so that if you want to print it out, you know that everything needs to be on the canvas and to be able to print it out. That conversely, though, there are times where you might actually, if this is a digital assignment, you might want to put the instructions off to the side, right? And how much side over here you get to see depends obviously on a couple things. The size of your screen that you're looking at, and it also depends on these numbers up here under view. Okay. So, but anyways, you could put instructions. You could put, if this, let's say, like this was like a drag and drop kind of thing, you could put the things that they're supposed to drag, over here in the gray area, and they have to drag them onto the canvas. So there's lots of interesting things that you can do in a Google drawing. But right now we're not going to do anything super duper interesting other than we're going to add a title. So we're going to click on our text box tool and we're going to add a title. And so we'll make it really big and long right now. I'm just going to type in 9 elements of digital citizenship. Oops, digital citizenship. Okay. And remember, big piece of paper. So what I'm going to do, oh, sorry, Haley. Okay, yeah, you bet. I'll just go back for a sec here. So we went under File. We went to Page Setup. And then in there, we chose Custom. And then we went 11 by 17 inches and then Apply. Okay. Perfect. You're welcome. Okay. So then we drew the text box across our screen. Now, when we talk about infographics, there's a bunch of rules that we're going to learn here in a bit. But one of the things is when we have titles, we actually want big and bold titles. And I keep telling you, no fancy fonts, no fancy fonts, no fancy fonts. I want you to use fancy fonts now. So here I've got some of my favorites. I can use that one. And again, big, like 60 or so, depending on the font. You want your title to stretch pretty much across the entire top of your document. Call it a banner, call it whatever you want. We want it to be able to stretch across or be fairly big, right? Because again, we're on a pretty big piece of paper here. I'm just gonna play around with the length of my thingamabobby here. Let's see if I can go. How much smaller do I have to go to get it all on one line? There we go. All right, so I got 44 using this original Surfer font. Okay, and of course, if you want to add color, you can choose any color you want here. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. So I'm just going to leave mine black for now. Okay, I just want to sort of impart a couple of rules that I have. One is, and not because I'm being mean, it's just that in the long run, on a complicated kind of document, this saves you a lot of grief. So one of my rules is that your text box cannot be any bigger than the text that is inside the box. So you shouldn't have huge long boxes if you've got one word in there, is kind of what I'm getting at. But before I'm going to just monkey with that, I'm also going to do this. As long as your insertion point is flashing inside this text box, if it's not, please do that. We're going to center this text 2 ways. So I call this center, and that means simply this, is I'm going to go to the centering tool or the alignment tool up here, and I'm going to go from left to right, center that, please. And then I come back there and then go from top to bottom, center that, please. So in that text box from side to side, it's centered. And then from top to bottom, it's centered in the text box. Okay. Now, if you can, or you have the ability to scrunch your text box down a little bit, go ahead and do that. Oops, that's a little bit too much. There we go. So that's about as small as I can make this one for the text that I've got and the font. The other thing that we're going to do is let's center it. So we can just click, hold, and drag it right on the screen, and we can center it when we get the red line at the top, like so. Oopsie, not quite. There we go. Okay. And then one other little thing that we can sort of kind of fudge a little bit is this. Is that, remember I said if it's touching the edge or it's over the edge, it won't print. But that only applies to, and I'll be using the arrow keys on my keyboard for this, the text. So obviously if it was sitting like that, yeah, all this text would be, the top of it would all be cut off. Okay. But as long as the text is inside or on the canvas, your actual text box can hang over a little bit. So that allows us to kind of really tighten it closer to the top than, you know, otherwise we might not do by default, just leave it where it is. So I want it up there because I need lots of room. Trust me, you're going to need lots of room for this infographic. Okay. So we got 9 elements of digital citizenship. Now, one of the other things that we're going to talk about and think about here too is your audience. So those of you that are high school people, you're going to use, adult words, right? Those of you that are teaching K1 to maybe even 3, you're going to need to take the words that we talked about when we talked about the 9 elements and break those down into little people words. Okay. And those of you in between, I don't know, grades 4 to 9 or whatever, 4 to 8, you need to, again, same idea. You need to sort of use appropriate words, but definitely for you folks that are going to be teaching younger kids, you know, we need to use young kids' words. So be mindful of who your end audience is. This infographic is going in your classroom on the wall somewhere, let's say, right? So that we can remind kids of what their expectations are when they're being digital citizens, right? That kind of idea. So we'll put the title up there. Okay. And we'll be good there. So we know that. We know how to make a text box. And then now you can see all the other tools that pop up as soon as you start putting objects on your canvas. Okay. So I'm going to make one more text box just to tell you sort of a little bit, just some key things before we take a few more notes here. So I don't know, I'm just going to say elements. Oops, elements that you need, elements to add to your infographic. And of course, you can obviously look at the rubric, but let's just go with this for a minute. Okay, so we need to have big, bold fonts and colors. The other things that we want to use is we want to use numbers. We want to use letters and arrows or lines help. And I don't know if I'll be able to do this. Let me just see here. We want to, okay, I'm just going to write it out. We're going to use, and I'm going to put this in quotes here, S patterns, SS or zigzag patterns. Okay, and that why we do this will become evident in a bit. And what I mean by that is we want, and I'll just do this on the little black chalkboard here. What I'm talking about is this. We want, so if this is our, let's say this is our infographic, what we want, and let's say this is number 1 here, something like that. We want, and maybe we'll put number 2 over there. We want our reader sort of to do, you know, this S or zigzag pattern so that you make their eyes move on the page, right? And that's how we keep, especially in a static one here that's nothing's happening on it. That's how we keep our viewer or our reader interested or engaged, is that we make their eyes move. Okay, so there's lots of ways to do that. You can do the numbering, you know, you could draw arrows, lines, those kinds of things. But that's what I mean when I say here, use a S or a zigzag pattern. Okay, so those are some things that we want to do on our infographic here. And, you know, I said big, bold fonts and colors. So if we talk about colors, I'm going to give you a little side lesson here, okay? And whoopsie. And what I mean by this, and here I'm going to highlight these 9 elements of digital citizenship. You all know that I can go up here to the text color tool and I've got these choices, right? And of course, you all know, or should know, I think, is that every row, right? Every row is complementary colors to one another, and also every column, right? So if I was going to go with an orange theme, these varying shades of orange, these hues or whatever you want to call them, are all complementary. So it doesn't matter whether you're going right to left or top to bottom. These colors are all work good with each other. But here's the question. If you want more colors, where do you go? Or how do you figure out what colors are great together? So some of you right now are answering in your head, well, Brad, you go up here and go custom color. And then you can use the slider and you can choose different colors of things. You sure can. And that is totally an option. I have a better idea. Okay, so I'm going to go cancel. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to one of my favorite websites called Picular. And I'll put the link in the chat for you right now. Okay. Okay, there's Picular. And one of the cool things that I like, I think Picular is by Google, but I'm not sure, so don't quote me on that. But one of the things that I like is this. So, well, you can see Santa Claus. You could type any word in the search bar. I'm going to type in Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day. And if you hit enter, it will give you, I mean, this is not, you know, every single color in the possible world, but it will give you colors that might be related to that type of an event. So if you typed in beach or forest or sky or, you know, roses, or I don't know, pick any word, literally, it will give you different colors of that thing. Okay. And then usually for me, this is a starting point. And I'm going to go, okay, is there any colors in here that I really like? And sometimes not, but I don't mind this pink or whatever color you want to call it. And so what you'll notice in Picular is that if you mouse over these letters and numbers, so now these letters and numbers are what they call the hexadecimal code. But if I mouse over the hexadecimal code and click, you'll see it gets copied to your clipboard. So if I come back to my digital citizenship infographic and I've got my text highlighted here and I go to the color tool and now I go custom, what you want to do is you want to get rid of that hexadecimal value, which is 0000, which is black, right? And you want to paste in your new color, okay? And I think you need to, you can't, I don't think it works very well if you right click and go paste. I think you need to use your keyboard commands. So if you're not sure what paste is, it's Command V. And you can see right now it's giving me that pink color. And if I say okay, it changes that text up here to that shade of pink. Okay. And then if you go back up to your palette, you'll see that that custom color is there now. And so you could use it in other elements of your infographic. Okay. If you wanted to. Now, that's great, Brad. But now we have 9 things to talk about. Maybe I need 9 colors. How do I do that? Okay. Excellent question. Let me show you another site. Okay, this one's called Adobe Color Wheel, and I'll give you the link in the chat for it as well. And there's lots of different ones. Adobe Color Wheel. Okay, and I'll show you how this one works. So now remember, I copied that pink color from Picular, right? This number here. I'll just make sure it's copied again. If I go to the color wheel, I can just go into this first color here and go paste and then hit enter. And then there's that pink. And now here are all the colors that are complementary to that pink. And then it gives you different colors. You could also come along the left-hand edge here and choose any one of these other things. If you choose a different thing though, you have to put that color back in the first spot again and then go enter. So you can play around with that and see which one works best and which one gives you the best colors. I didn't mind this first one, actually. I thought it gave us some really nice colors, but it's totally up to you. Okay. And then any of these colors that you want. So let's say, okay, I want this blue. I like this blue. You can copy that hexadecimal number, come back to your thing and say, okay, I'd like all of these, you know, whatever, to be in blue. And you can paste it as a custom color, paste it in there, and then makes them all, and I'll make them bigger, you know, makes them all blue so that they look like that. Okay, so any other thoughts on hexadecimal colors? Are you okay with it? Yes, maybe? Okay. One other site that I'm going to give you right here is called Color Hex. And sometimes I use this one because I don't even really know what colors I want to go with. So sometimes I'll go to this Color Hex website and I'll just look to see if there's a cool color. And right now I'm looking at them going, none of those really float my boat. Okay. Maybe this blue one here, but that maybe the green, but that's about it. So up here, you can also go up here in the menus to the latest palettes and see what other people have put together. And you might find one that you like. So, oh, here's, okay, I don't know. I'll just choose this one because it's Valentine's Day. So if I click on that one, it gives me all the hexadecimal colors for all of these different shades of kind of pink and red in there. Okay. And then you could use any one of them you want, or you could copy that, go back to Adobe's color wheel and paste it in. And you can play around with this. This does take time, but to me, in the long run, this is a good skill to know, and so that you can make things that are attractive to the eye and all that kind of jazz for your classroom. And I guess the only I don't know, like not bad thing, but the only thing that I don't like about it, let me just go back here. Where's my, there we go. The only thing that I don't like about it on custom colors, and this goes not only in Google Drawing, but all because you can do this in all Google things, is that if I go to another document, like let's say presentations, and I guess good or bad, I'll just highlight that to secure. Let me type some text in there. There we go. Those colors don't get saved across anything. So if I make a new Google Drawing or a new Google Doc or a new Google anything, these colors don't follow me. So again, if I were to make a brand new Google Drawing and came in here, you know, put in a text box, right, and came here, those colors don't follow. So you have to do this kind of on every single thing that you do. But once you have it, you've got it in that document at least. Okay, so elements for the infographic then are big, bold fonts and colors, numbers, letters, arrows, and lines. And let's just go down a couple more here. So I'm just going to say what you need. What you need. Okay, for each one, you need sort of three things. You need the word, right? Like you know, digital access. So you need the word. You need some type of definition. Okay. Now again, definition, depending on the age level, right? That will be different. Okay. Again, high school, bigger words. Kindergarten, grade 1, 2, 3, kind of smaller, you know, more appropriate words. And then you need some type of a picture, or if you want, we'll call it an icon for now. Okay. So for each of the 9 elements, you need the actual words that like go with it. You need the definition. And I would say that you put these in your own words if possible, because you'll remember them better if you do that. And then you add a picture or icon. Now, all the other stuff and how you're going to make it pretty is 100% up to you. Okay. So again, here's what I mean by this. We're going to do this. I'm just going to make a new text box. I'll just make it across here. I don't exactly know how I'm going to lay this out yet, but so remember our first one was digital access. And remember, these are, again, we got a lot of room to work with, so we can choose different fonts and different sizes. I'll make it 30. And then, you know, we would put the definition that we had in there earlier, okay, about digital access. and you might have an example. I'm going to put that in there, maybe for example. Okay, and then you're going to have a picture or icon that goes with it. So any picture that I'm just going to go fair digital access. I'm just going to search for an image here for 1 sec. I'll just show you what I mean. Right? I don't know. Let's say it's this one, digital access. You can actually just right click it and copy it and go back to your infographic and paste it in. Okay. Remember, I'm going to ask you a quick question here. If I didn't want all this extra white around kind of the edges, how would I get rid of that in a Google drawing? Does anybody know that? Actually, it works in, I think, all of Google things, but how do I do that? Okay, Bailey, double click on it. Yes. Okay. And then, so I'm just going to go back up for 1 sec, Bailey. So you notice that when you click an object, it gets the blue line around it, right? And I think we all know, and hopefully you do. If you don't, you're going to know here in a second. These blue dots are called handles. And of course, we know that if I click and hold, I can, drag it and reshape it. We know that, right? And of course, you learned that when we did the Google slideshow thing. So Bailey's right. We double click on it. And what you'll notice now is not only do we have the blue handles, but we've got these black ones as well. And what I can do is, because this is called cropping, if you're not familiar with this, I can crop this image like so. Right? Try not to cut anything off. Right? And if I hit enter, then, I didn't do a really great job there. What happened? Oopsie, hold on for 1 sec here. There. If I hit enter, then it crops all that extra white stuff out. So if you want, and of course, obviously you can make it smaller, right? So when I talk about picture or icon, a picture obviously is, a picture is something that's bigger, and an icon obviously is something that's a little bit smaller. Okay, so maybe you add that in front of there, or you do something with it. That's kind of appropriate, and how you want to design that. Okay, all right. Thoughts, questions, ideas, wonderings. Do you want me to show you to do anything over again? No, everybody's good? Okay, so if we look back in Google Classroom, like I said, there were some in here. There are some different examples, and you can look at them. I'm just going to switch my view here for a sec. There we go. And you can see that there are loads of different ways to do this. I'll move this one or bring this one up, right? So this one is that. There is only thing that's kind of missing on this one a little bit is if there would have been some type of a picture that went along with digital literacy, like a little icon or something, like even digital commerce would have a $sign or something. That would have been better. But this one does show you the numbering and then the arrows. And again, what we're doing is we're doing that zigzag thing that we're making the viewer's eye move, right? So that kind of idea, there's an example there. This person chose to do it a little bit of a different way with kind of almost like sticky notes. But again, we've got left to right, it's making our eye move. So that's okay. And I mean, you could pick out loads and loads of other ones. This person, I like this one from, right? They use kind of like a little computer screen. And again, they moved our eye from right to left or in this zigzag kind of pattern. You can see these little icons. They use bold text. They use numbers, all of that kind of stuff. So again, not a bad one to do. Oh, and one thing I can show you here is that you can see some of these have colored backgrounds. One of the things I don't think I showed you, but it's the same as in Google Slides, is if you right click on the canvas, you can change the color of the background. Now, if I just want to make it white, I can make it white. If I wanted to make it some other color, I could make it, pink or whatever. Or I could choose a gradient and say, oh, I'd like it some little shade of, I don't know, yellow or whatever color you want to do it, right? Some of them are bigger and bolder and darker. So obviously, when we're talking about complementary colors, one of the things that we have to remember about is contrast as well. Okay. All right, I want to do a little bit of notes about infographics so that you can start this assignment and get her done before the next time I see you. Okay, so here's what I'd like to do. I would like to do a little bit more notes on infographics, and I'm going to we'll try to whip through them as fast as possible. Okay, so in our notes, we can do infographics, or as a title, infographics. Now, when we talk about infographics, we're talking about a big fancy word really for poster. Okay, so I mean, it's just a version of a poster that now has a more 21st century kind of ring to it. Okay, but we see the infographics all over, everywhere we go, every single day. We see them in classrooms, we see them on campus, you see them in the grocery store, in a restaurant. They're infographics everywhere. And you see them in washrooms, right, on how to wash your hands effectively, or those things, or when COVID was, how to put your COVID mask on properly. So we see infographics everywhere that we go. So in our notes, let's write a few things here down about infographics. So this is kind of a long-winded definition, but it really does cover everything that I think that we should talk about when it comes to infographics. Okay, so let's do this. Oh, by the way, too, we're also going to abbreviate infographics to IG because I don't want to write it out every single time. So if we start off by going infographics are, now this is kind of a duh thing, but that's okay, are graphic visual representations, presentations, okay, of information, data, or knowledge intended to present information quickly and clearly. Right? And think about, for instance, let's say, think about posters that you see in washrooms about people have, how to wash your hands appropriately or effectively, right? I mean, they could have 6 or so pictures with some quick explanation, or they could have, just a bunch of sentences, bulleted point sentences, which no one's going to read, right? So pictures really convey the message quickly and clearly and in a universal way. Right? So I'll probably talk about it again, but I'm going to mention it right now. Think about if any of you have ever bought anything from IKEA that you've had to assemble, right? If you pull out that instruction booklet that's in the box with whatever it is that you bought from IKEA, it has instructions. But the thing that you'll notice is that there is either, it's been a while for me for IKEA, either very, very limited or no text at all. It's just image after image of what you're supposed to do with some numbers and different things like that. But if you think about infographics, I think IKEA is probably the king of it, right? Or the queen, or the top of the heap of it. And of course, in any language, because you can understand the picture, because there's not really any text that goes with it. So if you think about that, that's a really great example of a extended, really infographic kind of idea. So, so quickly and clearly. So the other thing that I want to add on here is this is a form. And this is what I really like about infographics. This is a form of storytelling. Right? And I'm going to bring up another example infographic that I had on on my screen here. Right? And it's this one, and you could all see it. It's in there, right? Here's a great one about the 10 most painful places to get a tattoo, right? And so it's got all this information. Again, they could have presented that information a whole bunch of different ways, but I think it's more effectively shown on a picture of a human being with this kind of thing. And we've all seen infographics like this before, maybe not on tattooing, but definitely on like label the parts of the eyeball, or label the heart, or label the human body, that kind of thing. We've all done blank maps of Canada where we've labeled lakes and rivers and capitals and provinces and all that jazz. Same kind of idea, very infographic-y kind of idea. Okay, so when we talk about conveying information quickly and clearly in a form of storytelling, that's not a bad image to sort of keep in your mind. Okay, now we use infographics. I'll write it out one more time here, infographics, because I've got room for it. Well, we use infographics where complex information, info, needs to be explained, and I'm going to use the words quickly and clearly again. Explained quickly, and clearly, comma, such as signs, right? Think of an exit sign, right? Sometimes it doesn't even say exit. Sometimes it just shows a people or person, I don't know, booking it for the door or whatever, right? So signs, such as signs, right? I mentioned already maps, right? We see infographics used a large amount in journalism. So whether it be a newspaper or a magazine or something like that. So journalism, technical writing, and I'll show you that in a minute, what I mean by that. Technical writing, and of course, and education. So it goes and education, right? And of course, again, think of any K-12 classroom that you've ever been in, and you look at the walls, there's all kinds of stuff all over there, right? There's stuff about nouns and verbs and parts of speech, and there's, writing rules, and there's rules for the classroom. There's all kinds of things on the walls that are considered infographics that give you a quick, how-to almost, right, of to do something. Okay, so I got a little bit more to write, but I'm running out of room on this page. So we just got to just continue on here. This is the last sentence of this kind of paragraph. Infographics can improve cognition. So I want you to underline that, cognition. Okay, right? And what specifically about remembering the details of whatever was on the infographic. So they can improve cognition by utilizing graphics to enhance the human visual, I want you to underline that word too, visual systems, apostrophe S, because it's possessive, ability, right, to see. And we talked about this when we talked about brain lesson plans and content chunking and how people remember things, right? The ability to see patterns and trends, right? The human brain likes that because it's easy, or it helps us organize things in our brain and that helps us remember it, right? So our brains like to do that type of organization. When we talk about our visual system, we know that there are 3 learning modalities, right? So if we talk about the 3 modalities, right? One of them is visual, right? One of the ways that we take in sensory information is through our eyes, right? Another one is auditory, right? If you're not familiar with the 3 learning modalities, right, is auditory. So we also take in things that we hear, right? Sensory memory, right? And then the last one is kinesthetic. Okay, by things that we touch or manipulate. And we know that, right? That's pretty clear. We know that's proven. Now, of course, the other thing that we should know, or right, is that the more of these modalities that we can combine, then the ability for students to remember increases. Okay, so we've got those 3 learning modalities, and of course, infographics really taps into the visual one. Now, there are different types of infographics that could tap into the auditory one as well, and also kinesthetic, or a combination of all 3 to help students remember again. Okay. All right. How are we doing for time? Okay. I do have an alarm set, by the way, so we don't go over time today. So there's going to be sort of 3, I don't know, almost like pillars of things that we're going to talk about. So, and I want to make it very clear so that when we talk about this on a quiz, there's not any confusion. So first thing we're going to talk about is 3 general categories of infographics. And I want you to underline the word category. Okay, it'll be like one of our pillars or categories. So 3 general categories of infographics. Okay. So category 1, or sort of number 1, not category number 1, or number 1 under the categories thing. Oh, right. And we're going to, again, this is the word that we're going to focus on, categories. Okay. Is one called data visualization. And we've just sort of talked about that a little bit in that definition that we just wrote, visualization. Okay. And when we're visualizing data, we typically visualize data through things like basic charts, right? Or graphs. I'll just put this all in one line. Okay. And that's how we do that, right? And again, what we're talking about here are things like, like a graph that looks like, a line graph that looks like that, or a bar graph or a pie graph. Really, that's kind of what we're getting at. We're just basic information that we could chart or graph very easily. Okay. Number 2 is information design. Okay. Okay. So this one doesn't necessarily focus on data. That's how they differ. Focus on data. Okay. But so where we would, so they don't focus on data, but what they really do focus on is concepts. Okay. And what we're talking about here is for this type of thing, it could be some type of a process. Like our tattoo guy, it could be part, anatomy, right? Those kinds of things. Or other, I'm going to put a broad category down here, instructional diagrams, right? And we use diagrams a lot. Even if you're teaching language arts, we've all seen the diagram of rising action, climax, all those kinds of things. So we use these everywhere. Okay, we use them in phys ed, we could use them in art, in shop class, like lots of different places. So we use loads, as teachers, we use loads and loads of instructional diagrams. Okay. And then the other thing that they do here, and please put yours down here. I'm just going to put mine up here so I just kind of keep it together, but yours can go down here. Okay. Is they communicate a message that is clear and universal. Okay, so again, on that one takes me right back to IKEA, right? The universal message of how do you put the shelf together, that kind of idea. Okay, and then the third one under these categories is editorial infographics. So number 3, which I have to put on a different page here. Number 3 is editorial infographics. Okay, and if you're thinking right now, right off the hop, newspapers, art, magazines, you're right on the right track, right? So just very quickly on this one, these are basically limited to simple line, bar, or pie graphs. Right? And we see these almost every day when we look at the news, if you look at the news, right? One of the ones that you'll see often is like a line graph, if we think, January, February, March, April, May, and so on. And I don't know, let's just go 1 to 10 here, right? Stock market, right? How are your stocks doing, on any given month, right? That kind of idea. Of course, we could put that in a bar graph, or we could put it in a pie chart, but we see that. The other place that we see graphs that look like this January, February one is tracking the weather, right? It'll show you what the weather's going to be like today, or what it's going to be like over the next 7 days, that kind of stuff. So if you think of along like those kind of simple types of charts or graphs, that's when we're talking about editorial infographics. That's what we're talking about. Okay, so those are our 3 different categories. And then the next thing that we're going to talk about is infographic design styles. Okay, and just like in the other one that we sort of circled the word category, let's kind of do the word design styles. Okay, so if we talk about different styles, the first kind that we're going to talk about is static infographics. So static infographics. And if by the first word you're looking at that going, they don't move, that is correct. They don't do anything. They're just, I don't know, whatever, on paper, written words or pictures on a piece of paper, they don't really do anything with. Okay, so static infographics tend to be simple. Okay, they're, some of the uses that you would see them would be in somebody's blog. Like I said, newspaper or magazine articles. You might see them in brochures, right? Or you might even get a student who's talking about a country in the world, and they're talking about the temperatures, during July, August, and September when you visit there. They might have some type of infographic that indicates that, right? Or any other really kind of print media. Okay, where the operative word there is really print, right? That kind of idea. And like I said, is that, you know what, I'm going to go up here. I'm going to go simple and don't move. That'll save me 1 line of notes here. Don't move. And then the last little subpoint here is stuff that we typically see that is static is line art. I'm going to ask you a question about that in a second, like what is line art? Different types of illustrations that we might use in our notes, in our lectures, on our worksheets, in whatever types of assignments, photos or photography. Okay, and if we just want to generalize everything else into paper craft, right? Really anything that's on paper kind of idea. What's line art? Does anybody know what line art is? Y'all do, actually. All of you know what line art is. Have any of you ever filled out a map of Canada? There's my map of Canada. Pretty good, hey? I know. Natural artist, right? And we've labeled the capitals and provinces on that line art, right? That's line art. Have any of you ever, like I said, had a picture of the human eye and you had to label the parts of the human eye? Line art, right? Basically, any worksheet that you give to students or even you create yourself typically would be something that's called line art. Here's another good example in the maybe out of school, but in the adult world, or people who like to color. You know, any of those Mandela books or things like that, where it's an adult coloring book and you just color in the shape or whatever. That's a black line art, or black line masters, they call that. So that kind of idea. So that when we're talking about line art, that's what we're talking about. And us as teachers, we use a lot of that in the assignments and stuff that we give to students. Okay, so one type or one style is a static one. Okay, the next style then is animated. So we have infographics that actually move, animated. And I'm not going to write infographic down. We know what we're talking about here, right? Typically, they are in the file format of a GIF. Okay, if you're not familiar with that, it's usually ones that end in .gif, or at least they can be converted into an animated image. Okay, and really it is basically like the old flip book kind of idea, where it's just one image after the other for a short period of time that kind of plays whatever it is that you want it to play. Okay, so they're usually in a GIF format. They usually grab people's attention because they're moving. Oopsie, not grad. Come on there, Bradley. There we go. Grab people's attention, right? Which is the whole idea behind that. And so because of that, they're great on things like social media, or I don't know, any kind of basic website, basically, really. Okay, and we've all seen them along the sides and things. There's different ones that we've probably seen along the way, right? And they're used as enhancements. Okay, and or like maybe even we could say like sometimes a tutorial. Okay, and so that's where animated infographics go. I get them all the time in things from Google where they're showing you how to do a skill, and they give you a quick little animation of how to go to the file menu, how to choose page setup, and then how to make your page 11 by 17. And they do that in a little animated infographic, that kind of idea. So they can really be used nicely in how to kind of situations. And then the last style here that we're going to talk about is interactive. So now we're going up another level where not only do we watch it and something's happening, but now I can actually move my mouse around and click on different parts, or I might be able to move or manipulate different parts. So the last type of infographic is interactive. And I can give you an example of all three. Let's just think of the human brain, right? So if we go back here and we talk about static infographics, I could give you a picture on a piece of paper that I photocopied of the human brain, and you have to label the parts. Okay, that would be a static example. Animated would be the human brain, and maybe it's moving around or spinning, or maybe the labels are getting applied automatically, you know, however, by magic, right? Or we could have an interactive one where I could actually click on the brain. I could rotate it in 360 degrees. I might be able to click on different parts and it splits apart and gives me some information about each part of the brain. So that would be an example of an interactive one, or a brain infographic, but three different ways that we could use it. Okay, so interactive require some sort of action or input from the viewer. And of course, if you weren't doing some type of action or giving some kind of input, it would be static, right? It would just sit there and not do anything, right? It's not rotating. It's not, doing anything by itself like an animated one would. if you don't touch it, you don't click on it and drag or whatever, nothing's going to happen, right? So this allows the viewer to explore the information or the data. Let's say put information, the info, right? So I wanted to know about, certainly I wanted to know about all of the brain, but the part that interests me the most is the amygdala. So I use the interactive one to, you know, pull the brain apart a little bit and get to that part of the brain, click on it, and it gives me the information I want about whatever it is I'm looking for, in this case, a part of the brain. Okay. All right. And so that is, again, if we go back, those are the styles. So remember, we had categories first. Now we have styles. Now we're going to have types is the next one after that. We'll see if we can squeeze them all in here. Okay. So there are 9 types of infographics. 9 types. Okay. Number 1 is one called a statistical infographic. Okay. And they are, you know, specifically designed to visualize, okay, and survey results, right? Like we did at the beginning of term with Google Forms, is we've got a survey now from our students. What are you going to do with that data? How are you going to represent that data? And you could definitely use an infographic for this type of thing. Okay. So you want to visualize survey results, that kind of thing. Or another one is you might want to back up. This will be a slashy. Back up an argument. Right? I'll give you an example of that. Maybe I'm going to say in a presentation to you, all of you, that if you use Google, research shows that students' achievement increases by 39%. Right? I'm just making this up as we go. But now on my slideshow behind me, I'm going to show you a couple of graphs that show what kids' achievement before they use Google and then after they use Google, or I mean, pick whatever thing you want, right? So that's the kind of idea. So I want to sort of support my argument. I'm not arguing with you, but I just want to support my argument saying that if you use this product, you're going to get better results. And so here's the pictures behind me to prove that. And again, if we think about that, that's how we talked about making a good slideshow, is I give the information, the pictures behind me support what I'm saying. So in this case, infographics are an excellent way, especially when you're doing an argument type of thing, to use. Okay. And because of that, it puts a focus on the data. Focus on data. Okay. What I'm going to show you here, just 1 second here, is that I have got a slideshow that goes with that. So if I go like this and I click on here, when we talk about statistical infographics, the black one I had to split in 2 because it's long and skinny, it didn't fit on the page. So, you know, this one, or I'll just make it a slideshow. So maybe you can see it better, right? The black background one is talking about childhood obesity. Now, of course, there's probably volumes of information about childhood obesity, but how do we make parents or the average person more aware that this is an issue and we need to do something about it? Well, boom, there it is. Quick infographic talking about, 1 in 3 American childhood adolescent kids aged 12 to 19 are overweight or obese, right? And of course, there's reams of information that go with that. But you can see that the infographic takes that information, breaks it down into bite-sized pieces, and it's easier to understand. Same thing here. I mean, we could talk about, about girls, right? Girls and schooling and how many girls are in school or not in school across, the globe, that kind of idea. Again, lots of information in a very short, quick, sweet kind of way. Okay. So if we talk about statistical infographics, some of the things that we want to do with them is we do want to tell a story, right? And the story we're telling is about the information. And again, whatever thing we're trying to plug or demonstrate or argue, that's what we're doing. We're telling a story about that, right? So we want to do that. So because we're telling a story, we want to use things like charts, right? We want to use things like icons. So remember, icons are just small pictures, right? Icons. We want to use, certainly where appropriate, different kinds of images. And I'm just going to call them fancy fonts, okay? Instead of eye-catching fonts, we'll just call it fancy fonts, right? So again, there's what we want to use. We want to use bold colors, right? I'll add that here, bold colors. Okay, that type of idea. I'm just looking here. And of course, we want to not only bold colors, but also we want to use contrast. There's my alarm to remind me we've got 5 minutes. Just one sec here. Okay. We do a couple more, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you this slideshow and the rest of these notes so that you can cover them on your own and then start your infographic. But we can get a couple of them started. How much we got? Still 5 minutes? We can do one more for sure. Okay. All right. I'm just going to scooch down to number 2. And again, these are in no particular order of importance. So number 2 then is informational infographics. So we kind of talked about these already. Okay, so informational infographics. So what we're talking about here is that obviously we're trying to give some information to students. So what we want to do is we want to divide into, I'm going to say digestible sections. Digestible. Okay. You want to use, if you're going to divide them into section, you're going to want to use numbers, headers, numbers, headers, lines or arrows, etc. Again, anything that'll get the viewer's eye moving around. Okay, and under headers, I want to add also that they should be descriptive headers. Okay, descriptive headers. Okay. When you're using, did I say colors here? Oh, let's add colors. And when we add colors, what I want to do is I want to add on to that, that those colors could be alternating. Okay, so if we look at it that way, and we look at an example of that, this is the one on the left here, the 5 tips to keep your chin up. So you can see they've used icons, bold titles, numbers. They've used arrows here to guide us to the different things. So we're going in that zigzag pattern. And you can see this is, whoopsie, wrong way. This is pretty much exactly kind of the idea that I want you to do for your digital citizenship one. Something like potentially, because your digital citizenship one is an informational infographic. So, you know, something that like that, or something like this 9 ideas. Again, this is broken into 2 pieces because it's too long. You can see here they didn't use numbers, but they did use bold titles. They did use icons. They did use very small text, which should be way bigger. But they are moving our eye from the hat to the book, to the chalkboard, to the briefcase, and so on and so forth. So those kind of principles. Okay, so we are going to be out of time here. So what I'll do in Google Classroom, under this digital citizenship infographic assignment number 11, I will throw in the rest of the slideshow and the rest of my notes that go with the rest of this. So we got 7 more types of infographics to cover. And that way you could be able to sort of check it out on your own. Okay. Now, before I let you go, any thoughts, comments, questions? Because I don't see you now for 2 weeks, right? I don't see you till the 27th. So is there anything on your mind? And of course, obviously you can contact me anytime, but all right, gang, here's what I decided to do. I will just continue on doing the lecture as a video, and then that way you can listen to it and hear me talk about it instead of just reading it and maybe not being completely understanding what we're getting at. So we ended off in regular class time with informational infographics, okay, as a type. So type number 3, and again, remember, no order of importance, is timeline infographics. And of course, in a timeline, we're all familiar with timelines, right? We've done them in, social class, or maybe even in English class, or I mean, anywhere that you want to show the history of something, right? So number 3 then is timeline infographics. And obviously here is, again, when you want to visualize the history of something. Okay, the history of something, of I don't know, something. How's that sound? Something. Can I squeeze it in there? There we go. Okay. And that's really it for sort of like what it does. Now, again, sort of like best practices or things that we want to use, right? And again, just think of it this way, and this kind of goes back to our brain lesson plan stuff that we talked about, is that humans tend to make sense of time spatially. Sense of time spatially, right? And for us, in order for us to be able to recall things, that's what we do. We sort of put it in a context of, when did I learn that? What was going on when I was learning that? That kind of idea. Did I learn that, in grade 3? Did I learn it in grade 4? Or when did I learn it? So there's a timeline of stuff, right, that we learn or that we know. So again, we like to do this spatially as human beings. So things that help us remember, again, or elements, are lines or arrows, right? Arrows. And also icons, photos, right? Think of, you're doing Prime Ministers of Canada, right? And from the first one to our current one, you would have pictures and dates and things like that. So photos would work good. Pardon me. Labels, right? You need to sort of label your lines or whatever on a timeline. Okay. Let's see, what else do I have here? Got that. Nice bold fonts, of course. Bold, or let's see, I'm going to go fancy again. Fancy fonts. Okay, and those kinds of things. Okay, now if we look at it from a slideshow point of view, and I bring that up here, and we talk about timelines, we are looking at this kind of a thing, right? So here we go. We've going to have it in a vertical orientation. And of course, the line down the middle is called the spine. So we got the spine down here as a gray line. We've got the spine over here, these colorful dates. And you can see here that, brief history of technology. And again, it's moving left to right and keeping our eye on that zigzag pattern. We've got a nice bold title. We've got a picture that makes sense. We got a bit of a definition kind of thing I'm looking for from you on your digital citizenship infographic as well. And then of course you can see this one here on social media or whatever, and the evolution from 2002 to 10. And you can see how they've done them here. Again, nice complementary colors, bold colors, vibrant, that kind of idea. So yeah, so look, I think it looks great. So when we're talking about timeline infographics, basically that's kind of where we're headed with that kind of idea. Okay. And again, we have seen these, I'm sure, loads and loads of times, certainly over our K-12 learning experience for sure. Okay. So if we think about the next type, then number 4, are process infographics. And again, we are very familiar with these, even if you can't think of one right now. Other than maybe like outside of the IKEA, right? So process infographics. Okay. And of course, these help, they provide a summary or overview, Back up here, Bradley. Over, oh my goodness, view. Apologize for my writing. An overview of a concept, right? Or overview, let's do this, of the steps. Of a process. Okay. Like putting together something from IKEA. Those of you that have ever put Lego together know that when you buy a set of Lego, there are books in there that have just picture after picture of what part you put next and how you build your Lego thing. So those kinds of ideas as well. Okay. They're intended to simplify, and clarify, right? Oopsie, that's a really bad Y. Each step. Okay. Usually, pardon me, most process infographics flow from top to bottom. Okay. But there is nothing saying that they can't flow from left to right. Okay. I wouldn't say right to left, but definitely left to right. Okay. And of course, here, numbering the steps is important. Now, another type of process infographic that you might have seen more probably on the text way, but definitely you could have pictures that are involved with this on each step of these processes. And what I'm talking about are recipes, right? When you are making something, there's not everything that you make, but there are certainly certain things that you make that follow different steps, and they need to be done in a certain order, or your meal or whatever, your bread, whatever you're making will flop, right? So numbering the steps is important. So you do this first. You combine the flour, the eggs, the milk, and the oil first, and then you do the next thing, right? That kind of idea. So we've got that. Let me just see what else I want to put in here. Of course, then, obviously, they also use directional cues like arrows or lines. Directional cues, right? Lines, I'll put little dots on the end of these ones, or arrows, right? That kind of idea. Okay. And so that helps, again, the viewer know what they're supposed to be doing. Again, we want to use this serpentine, or, this zigzag pattern that we've talked about already. And again, you want to use, fancy fonts, colors, fancy fonts, colors, etc. Okay, so they look really good. If we go to my slideshow to sort of exemplify what I'm talking about here, and we go to my next slide, here's a process infographic. The one on the left maybe is not the greatest, but it is an example of a left to right one versus top to bottom. But if you look at the customer journey map, then we've really got what we're talking about here, right? We've got the first item, which is they review their goals, and they move over to gather research, and then they follow, it down in that kind of zigzag pattern. Okay, so that one's a really great example of a process. Think of, things in school like scientific process. Again, in foods or fashions, there would be ways in an order or a process that you would cook a meal, that you would, sew a pair of pajamas together kind of idea, or make a coat or something. And then same thing, in the gym, right? There would be a process to doing a layup, or to doing a sit-up or a push-up, or, pick your exercise or your activity. You could definitely draw a process infographic of step 1, 2, 3, 4, or whatever it is, right? That kind of idea. And yeah, so there we go. Now let's do number 5. And let me just go escape here, and we'll go to number 5 in our notes. And there's 9 of them, if you remember. So it'll take a few more minutes, but I think it's worth explaining. So number 5 then is geographical infographics. So, or geographic, if you want, geographic. And if you're thinking maps, you're all right on the right track because that's exactly where we're headed. Okay, so this is when you want to visualize location-based data. Okay, hold on here. We'll make that better like that. Based data. There we go. Okay, so you can think of any map that you've ever either made or maps that you have seen that would tell you anything from how much precipitation, the weather, natural resources. I mean, you can think of anything that you can think of for a location, and you're kind of on the right idea there, right? And of course, the way that we visualize that are in map charts, right? And again, we've all done fill in the provinces, capitals types of ones, that kind of idea. But of course, obviously, these kind of maps can be static, they can be animated, or they could be even interactive, right? So one of the types of maps that you might see, would be a heat map. And I'm not referring to, although you could, this does not necessarily refer to temperature. And I'll give you an example here. On a heat map, you would see this kind of thing. Let me just grab that and go to the colors, right? On a heat map, and we'll use red as a good example, is the lighter colors would mean less, and as you get darker, it might potentially mean more, okay? Now, yes, it could mean temperature, but it could mean more cars produced there, right? The other thing that you'll see, and I'll just go back to our notes, sometimes on a heat map is you'll see, circles that end up getting bigger and bigger, and that each circle, the size of the circle means more of whatever it is that you're measuring. So back when in COVID, there were lots of maps that came out that taught us where the most cases of COVID were. And what you do on a map like that is you usually mouse over an area, and either it pops up, or if you click on it, some information comes out based on that particular heat map. So heat maps are really a good example of an infographic that we could use to give information about that location. If we look at the slideshow that I've got here, there's two different kinds. So on this one, it gives you lots of things. It gives you bar graphs, it gives you the icons, it gives you titles, but it gives you these circles, like I explained. So smaller circles versus bigger circles, and these are oil imports to the US, right? So who imports the most oil to the US? So you can see by that. This black one here of the United States is, if you look at the pins, each one of these is a location in the United States, and based on these pins and the information down below here is what is the, what is the product that comes from each state that is like the big money maker for that state, okay? And so like if you go to Nevada, you come down here, you can see 777, obviously gambling, right? So that kind of idea. So geographic infographic, and we've seen lots of them, right? Okay, number 6. And number 6 is a comparison infographic. And again, we've seen lots of these in our lives. Infographic, and I'll just draw 2 small ones that we are all familiar with, right? We've all drawn one of these charts somewhere along the way. Those are called T-charts. If you never ever drawn one, it's a T-chart. And then the other one that we draw, and we just drew it when we did our slideshow scavenger hunt, is a Venn diagram, right? It's a comparison, right? We're comparing A and B. And A, right on each side of this big circle is what's unique about each one of those places. And of course, right down the middle here is what is similar, right? So we've all done comparison infographics in one form or another, maybe not fancy and colorful, big, bold, broad fonts, all that jazz, but we've seen them in various formats, right? So of course, then obviously is that when we want to compare options between 2 things. Okay. And sometimes we want to see the similarities, and sometimes we want to see the differences. And then obviously from both of those sort of pieces of information, we might purchase something, right? Or we might make a decision on what kind of car we're going to buy, or what kind of phone I'm going to get next, or what game console, or the French versus the English in the American Revolution, or the Canadian phenomenon between English and French. Like, it could be anything really, right? So we're comparing the options between two things, okay? Hopefully in an unbiased way. But obviously, if I'm trying to make you buy my phone and I'm comparing it to the other brand, I'm probably not going to be biased. But again, this is where us being able to take that information and make sense of it is part of that whole citizenship literacy idea of being a digital citizenship. So we've got that. So again, typically they are split down the middle, right? Split down the middle. Okay, we don't typically see sideways T-charts. This kind of an idea, we don't typically see those in a landscape or horizontal orientation. They're usually in a vertical type of way, and that's okay. Okay, so again, here we want to use bright colors. Right? We want to use fancy fonts if you want, fancy fonts. And then obviously we want to use some type of images or photos or icons of the thing so that, we have obviously the infographic part, the graphic part comes out on that, right? So, yeah, so let me show you an example then of one. It's a little dated, but you'll get the general idea here, right? It doesn't matter whether it says iPhone 6 or iPhone 15, doesn't matter. You get the same idea, right? The one on the left telling you all the virtues and all the goodness of an iPhone. On the other side, you see a Galaxy S7, and you see all the same information and comparing it back and forth. And then from there, you have to make your decision, right? Is having more milliamp hours in 3600 versus 1750, is that more important to you? Because if it's more important to you, then you might buy the Galaxy. Or has having more RAM or storage space or screen size, price, all of those things we compare when we're buying products, right? And those kinds of things. And then we decide in our own minds on ourselves which gives us the biggest bang for our buck, and we go with that usually, right? That kind of idea. All right, number 7 in our notes then is this. Number 7 is hierarchical infographics. And you have seen many of these, but let's write it down before I talk anymore here. Hierarchical infographics. Okay, and if you're going, I'm not sure, Brad, if I have seen one, you sure have. And you've seen one in the form of a triangle that had different levels called Bloom's taxonomy. And you've also seen a very similar triangle like this, same idea. And if some of you are thinking Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you'd be exactly right. So these usually organize information from least to greatest. Okay. But you could definitely go the other way and go greatest to least if you wanted. I mean, it doesn't matter. Okay. So there's that kind of thing. And then we just have to give some type of indication of direction, right? So if we're going from bottom up, there needs to be, either an arrow or something like that that shows that we're going from bottom to top, especially for somebody who's unfamiliar, or of course, obviously having some type of numbering scenario would be helpful as well. Okay. So there's a hierarchical. That's all I'm going to say about it, that one. Number 8, we're almost done these notes, is a list infographic. And so again, this is another, all of these are ones that we could potentially use in the K-12 classroom, but the list infographic is one definitely that we would use. Okay. All right. So typically in a list, if you were typing it, you'd use bullet points or things like that. What in visual infographics, or sorry, in list infographics that we're looking at is we want to replace the bullet with an icon or something fancy. So bullets, we're going to put here, bullets are replaced. Bullets are replaced by icons. Now you might be able to cheat a little bit and make your icon some type of a bullet or some type of a number, but we're not using like a dash. You know, we're not doing the typical, there's our list kind of idea. We're not doing that. Okay. Instead of that, we want to use, like I said, we want to use something fancier than that. Okay. Of course, we want to use by creative icons, replaced by icons. I'm going to say fancy fonts again because it'll fit better. Fancy fonts. This is all repeat, but all important stuff, right? And I'll say colors as well. Okay. So again, we want to use bold, vibrant colors and complementary colors, obviously, in what we're doing here. Okay. Again, numbering is helpful. Numbering helps. Takes the guesswork out of somebody maybe misinterpreting the direction you want them to go, kind of idea. Okay. We use colors, fonts, icons, backgrounds, same idea. And then, of course, we want to use an S-shaped or that zigzag pattern of a layout. Also, one other one that we could use is a circular layout on this one. Okay. All right. So let's have a look at an example. I don't have an example of a circular layout, but I do have an example of a numbered list. So there's Bloom's taxonomy and obviously Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So we, again, like I said, we're very familiar with those. And then if you look on the left-hand side where it says phone apps, this is really exactly what we're kind of getting at, right? Bullets replaced by numbers or color and nice colors. And bold fonts, those kind of, they didn't really use a fancy font, but they were listing, I don't know, like the top 10 phone apps for an iPhone kind of idea. So again, you can see we're going left to right in the zigzag or an S type of flow, and they accomplish what they did really well. Again, the only thing that I might have added differently on this one, and I didn't make this one, but is some icons, right? So what does the icon for the oil list or carrot weather look like? And that would just help me when I go to the App Store and go, oh, yep, right, that's the right one, right? Because I've got the name and I've got the icon that goes with it. It just helps, I think, probably make your choices better or easier at least. And then if we look at the infographic on the right-hand side, there's types of chemical reactions. If you wanted, I guess you could kind of go in anyway. You could go in a zigzag or an S. You might even be able to, in your mind's eye, picture that as a circular one. But it's just a horizontal example of that versus a vertical one. Okay. All right. Number 9, believe it or not, we are almost done here. Number 9 then is my personal fave. And number 9 is a resume infographic. Because I think this kind really takes like the whole idea of a resume to a whole different level. Because if you think about your traditional or your typical resume, it's just a bunch of text, right? It's just pages of text that people have to decipher. And that's okay. You know, currently at least, those are the norm, right? That's the norm for a resume or a cover letter, and that is to give all that text, right? But with a resume infographic, I think, like I said, it takes it to a whole new level, and you could use it, I think, most efficiently or effectively actually at the interview. So you've done the traditional application package where you've got a cover letter, resume, references, your transcripts, and all the things that go in one of those types of packages. But now they have called you or emailed you or contacted you in some way and said, hey, we'd love to interview you. Come on in. Well, I think that's where the resume infographic really would have its power. Okay, so before I show it to you, let's just write a couple things down about it. There's not a ton here for this one either. Okay, first thing is that we shouldn't say that it cannot replace, or does not, I guess, doesn't replace the traditional resume, at least not yet. But it certainly can supplement it, right? Because if you think about it again, like I said, this is the one that I might bring to the interview, is those people are going to have reams of paper in front of them. And again, you're probably not the only candidate they're interviewing. So they have shuffled through dozens, if not hundreds of pages of stuff. So having a quick infographic, remember, quickly and clearly give them a picture or a review of all the awesome qualities that you bring to this position. This might be a handy one to bring right to the interview. Okay, plus to show off some mad computer skills, right? So it won't replace the traditional resume. You want to have, a big bold header, which probably is your name. Okay, again, now this one, I'm not saying so much fancy fonts. Okay, so big bold header, and I think I'm going to use the word traditional fonts. Okay, now I know we're dealing with adults here, but let's keep it more kind of on the professional, I don't know, less creative way. Okay, boring fonts, Times New Roman, Arial, those kinds is what we're kind of typically going to use here. Okay, now that bold header should or could reflect your personality. Okay, and how do you do that with Times New Roman? Yeah, that's a really good question, Brad. I mean, I'm not saying you can't use other fonts, just not super crazy. Okay, so we want this. I mean, this whole page really should be this infographic should be a reflection of your personality. Okay, your personality, or why don't we say your brand? Okay, because we all have a brand, whether we've got it actually articulated in, on a letterhead somewhere, but we all have our own personal brand. The way we act, the way we dress, the way we comb our hair, all kinds of stuff. We have our own brand, right? So we want to help convey this in our infographic. Okay, of course, here, things like logos, right? So I don't know, I'll think of a logo. Oh, how about Apple computers, right? Well, in my resume, I've worked for Apple. Well, then have an Apple logo, right? So logos, you might want to have them in there. Of course, icons that represent different things that you've done potentially, that kind of stuff, and other types of data visualizations. And remember, when we talk about that, we're talking about graphs, charts, those kinds of things, right? You might want to have those in there. And when I show you this next infographic resume, you'll see what I mean on that. Okay, you might want to, under data visualizations, you might want to have bar or line graphs. Okay, and you also might want to have something called word clouds on there. So word clouds, and if you haven't seen one of those, I'll put one on the screen here in a second for you to see. So word clouds, keywords, right, that catch people's attention. Okay, that kind of stuff. So if we go to the slideshow and we go to slideshow mode, what we're talking about is this kind of a thing. Now, for my preference, I've purposely shown two different kinds here. I like the one on the right-hand side, Emily's, better because it does have some images on it, right? And it's got a picture of her, which you may or may not want to add to your resume. It depends on you, but it also depends on the job ad. Sometimes the employer asks for a picture. That's okay. But you can see on the left-hand side with Emily, she's got her name, she's got software engineer, she's got her contact information, which is super important because if at least two ways to contact you, because I've seen people lose out on an interview or lose out on a job because we can't contact them, or the same case, we can't contact their references because they only gave us a phone number, which always goes to voicemail, and we can't check. So having voicemail, email, text messaging or something like that, or some other messaging app or something, would be preferable to have that on there. Okay. And so you can see she's got some things that are coming off of her main picture there. You can see she's got bullet points to show, and you can see that those are different shades sort of green going down all the way to yellow of sort of her key characteristics. And she's got a little bit of her education on the left-hand side, a little bit of her experience. She's used a cute little kind of dotted bar graph to show which skills she's super good at. And of course, she left some references. And again, what I would do is have an email on there so that they could also contact that person by email. So I like that one better. I mean, even though it's kind of plain, I don't know, it just speaks to me a little bit better than Megan's on the right-hand side, where it is, she did use some of the things that we talked about fonts and bold fonts and colors, but she didn't really use any colors, which for me, I would have at least made these gray boxes colored and made them complementary colors all the way down. At least you could have done that. So again, if I were going to pick, a candidate just even based on resume, I would say I'd pick Emily first. But of course, obviously, they're not the same kind of job either. But so you can see how those work. And again, I think a quick one-pager like Emily's over here that you could hand out at an interview, I think that'd be amazing. And again, in those types of situations, you're looking at things that you can do or provide at an interview that's going to put you in a higher standing or a better light than all the other people applying for the job. And this might just be the one thing. Okay. All right. Let me just go back to my notes for 1 second. I just want to make sure I didn't forget anything. And I think we're good to go. Yeah, we are. So as far as this goes, I will post this to Google Classroom so that you can see it. Obviously, you've got the notes there if you need them or want them. And of course, if you have any questions or you need suggestions or help or whatever, don't be afraid to get a hold of me. Okay, thanks, everybody.